Chapter 779. There were about 30 demonic cultivators and half-demons in total. With the addition of the two sharks, the cultivators of the two sects were at a complete disadvantage. They had no chance of winning if they continued to stay. The demonic cultivators and half-demons chased after them in different directions. With 3 times the number advantage, they weren't afraid of splitting up. A mid-stage Yuanying demonic cultivator asked, "The Demon Flame sect sent news that a cultivator with a black halberd killed Blood Sea Daoist. We all know Blood Sea Daoist's strength, he's not inferior to us. This person was unharmed after killing Blood Sea Daoist, he's probably stronger than us. That brat fled to the north, Dao, who's going to chase him?" A silver shark half-demon sneered, "This person's movement technique is extremely fast and he has a dense dragon chi. We half-demons with the bloodline of the sea race tremble in fear. You demonic cultivators should also be afraid of this thing, no one is confident of winning. This person only killed Blood Sea Daoist, my nephew was only injured in the fight and didn't lose his life. He has no enmity with our silver shark tribe, we won't take the risk to chase him. Besides, this person is extremely fast. Even if we chase him, we might return empty-handed, why waste time?" The mid-stage Yuanying demonic cultivator smiled. "In that case, we rogue cultivators don't need to meddle in other people's business. We're only doing this for money, we're not disciples of the Demon Flame sect. Blood Sea Daoist's death has nothing to do with us. It's better to chase after the disciples of the Xianxia sect and the Golden Sand sect. These people's strength is only SOSO, as long as we can kill one of them, we'll get tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones. As for that black halberd brat, send the sharks to chase after him, lest the Demon Flame sect use this as an excuse." The silver shark tribe half-demon nodded and transmitted his voice to a huge shark. The demonic cultivators and half-demons scattered and chased in different directions. Wang Daoyuan didn't know about the situation at Drifting Cloud Island. He wrapped himself in the true dragon's shadow and flew north for more than 10,000 miles before taking out a grade 5 flying boat and heading northeast. He also took out the guest elder token of the Golden Sands sect and crushed it. Previously, he had saved Mo Liangping and Du Zhe once. As long as one of them could escape, his memorial tablet would definitely be placed in the ancestral hall of the Golden Sand sect. Previously, when the flying boat was attacked by the giant shark, it was also in ambush in advance. Now that he was escaping, the speed of the shark was too slow and it couldn't catch up to him. During the 2 years that Wang Daoyuan had been in the Golden Sand sect, he had also obtained a lot of information about the Demon Islands. Unfortunately, the Golden Sand sect was not a major force. They had always been active around the Golden Sand Island and only knew about the situation within hundreds of thousands of miles. He had killed Daoist Blood Sea of the Demon Flame sect. If he didn't run far away, the Demon Flame sect would find trouble with him. Now that there was nothing else to do, it was better to find a secluded place to cultivate properly. It would be too uncomfortable to have someone looking for trouble all day long. Meanwhile, the cultivators of the Xianxia sect and the Golden Sand sect who were running for their lives were not as free as he was. There were more than 30 people surrounding 8 people. On average, each person had to face about 4 opponents of the same level. Mo Liangping and Du Zhe were still fine. After being saved by Wang Daoyuan, they had been running at the front. Chasing them was the most difficult. If they had the time, they might as well take down the cultivators of the Xianxia sect first. The bounty of the cultivators of the Golden Sand sect was far less than that of the cultivators of the Xianxia sect. After flying for thousands of miles, Mo Liangping and Du Zhe saw that there were no giant sharks chasing after them. Du Zhe took out another flying boat. The two of them boarded the flying boat and flew toward the sect gate. The cultivators of the Xianxia sect were not so lucky. They hadn't run far in the first place, and now it was even harder to escape. Elder Li and Elder Qi were not in the mood to rescue the others. They each used their escape techniques to escape. As Yuanying cultivators and high-ranking elders of the Xianxia sect, they still had many life-saving methods. After escaping for thousands of miles, they took out their flying boats again and ran for their lives. The other cultivators of the Xianxia sect were not so lucky. With their early-stage Yuanying cultivation, They could not escape the pursuit of mid-stage Yuanying fiendish cultivators and half-demons. After struggling for a short while, they all died in battle. Even Lu Ziyuan, whom Wang Daoyuan was familiar with, did not escape the disaster. After escaping for tens of thousands of miles in the northeast direction, Wang Daoyuan encountered a large island with many cultivators on it. This place was still too close to Drifting Cloud Island. These cultivators might have connections with the Demon Flame sect. He did not stay on this island. Instead, he turned around and headed east a few thousand miles away from the island. After running for half a day, he finally found a relatively barren island. This island was also a small volcanic island with a radius of about 10 miles. There was not a single blade of grass on the island. There was only a mid-grade level 5 fire spirit vein. There were no large islands within tens of thousands of miles. Ordinary cultivators would not even be able to obtain cultivation resources on such an island. Naturally, no one would stay on this island. This kind of environment happened to be Wang Daoyuan's favorite. Moreover, this place was slightly north of the demon-slaying island. It was at least tens of thousands of miles away from the demon-slaying island. The Demon Flame sect's mountain gate was tens of thousands of miles southwest of the demon-slaying island. It was more than 200,000 miles away from here. There was also the Zhenhai sect in the middle. It was unlikely that they would cause trouble here. Wang Daoyuan came to the top of the island. The lava here was more stable. He entered the crater of the volcano and released a wisp of dust-returning flame. It burned a cave on the wall beside the lava lake. There was nothing urgent to do now. There was no need for him to take risks. He would slowly cultivate on this barren island. First, he would raise his cultivation to mid-stage Yuanying. When the 5 elemental essence matured, he would be able to use the 3 treasures tool nurturing technique to nurture a new natal dharma artifact. As for returning to Beiyuan Xiaoxian, it was useless to go back now. The nascent formation fruit would take a few more decades to mature. Even if he went back now, he would not be able to help Zhou Luan form her nascent soul. Moreover, he would not be able to find any level 5 materials or elixirs. Instead of going back to wait for the nascent formation fruit to mature, it was better to collect more materials here and return when the nascent formation fruit was about to mature. His family was protected by his master, Lei Yanzhenren, so no one would dare to touch him. He would draw out the red yang primordial fire and dust returning flame to ignite the lava lake below. He would consume the nascent cultivating pill and slowly cultivate using the spiritual energy in the flames. 10 years later, Wang Daoyuan's body was shining with 5-colored light. There was a 4-inch 9 centimeters tall baby lying on top of his head. The baby kept absorbing the spiritual energy in the lava lake. After a while, the baby's body trembled violently. Then, its height gradually increased until it was 7 inches tall. At this moment, the baby entered Wang Daoyuan's body. The 5-colored light was completely withdrawn. The fluctuation of spiritual energy had increased by a large margin, reaching the level of intermediate Yuanying. It had been more than 20 years since he broke through to the Yuanying stage. Such a speed was rare. He had consumed 60 to 70 nascent cultivating pills and absorbed an unknown amount of spiritual energy from the lava. If all this spiritual energy was provided by high-grade spirit stones, it would probably bankrupt a sect like the Golden Sand sect. It was also thanks to the spiritual energy seed. An ordinary early Yuanying stage cultivator would not be able to absorb so much spiritual energy even in 50 years, let alone 20 years. After breaking through, he continued to extract spiritual energy from the flames to stabilize his cultivation. 2 days later, the fluctuation of spiritual energy in his body had become very stable. Within the space of the spiritual pearl, the 5 spiritual veins had also grown to intermediate level 5. The earth essence was the first to merge with the spiritual veins and had completely merged with them. As the earth's spiritual vein evolved, so did the earth essence. The E-wood essence had also reached lower level 5. With the nourishment of the intermediate level 5 wood spiritual vein, it did not take long for it to evolve. The leaf fire essence was originally only 1 inch long. After being nourished by the spiritual vein for so many years, it had also improved. Now, it had grown another 3 inches long. However, the newly grown portion did not reach lower level 6. It was only intermediate level 5. After all, it was nourished by the intermediate level 5 wood spiritual vein and could not directly grow into a level 6 Fei. Chapter 780. Out of the 5 spiritual fires in the space, only the dust returning flame was still of upper grade level 4. The Gui water death flame and the Tai golden flame had been nourished by the upper grade level 5 element's essence and had advanced. The earth element essence was still the original one and could not help the dust returning flame to advance. Even if it lacked that special energy, the surrounding environment was filled with level 5 spirit chi. It would still be of some use. Now that the dust returning flame had shown signs of advancing, it should not be a problem for it to become a level 5 spiritual fire. In the past 10 years, the amount of water in the spirit spring near the water spirit vein had increased tremendously. Even though the clone had dug many canals to irrigate more than 20 acres of spirit fields, it was still unable to use up all the spring water. He had already thought of a method. He would let the clone dig a large puddle on the newly added spirit field at the north end of the spirit pearl space. As the amount of water increased, the size of the puddle also increased. Now, the puddle occupied more than 3 acres. Unfortunately, the yin qi in the water was too dense and he could not raise fish in it. He could only plant some inky jade lotus and some yellow spring willows in the shallow water. The puddle became Yun Yi's territory. Every day she would bathe, swim, absorb the pure yin qi, and eat some lotus seeds. Her life was very comfortable. Wang Daoyuan did not plan to go out now. In the 7 Stars Secret Realm's Ziwei Palace, there was a part of the puppet arts refining method. Previously, he did not have the time to refine it. Now that he had enough time, he could give it a try. There were many uses for puppets. Although low-grade puppets could not participate in battles, they could still be used to take care of the spirit fields. Especially on the family side. After obtaining the Green Willow Secret Realm, they did not have enough manpower to take care of it. If he could have a large number of level 1 and level 2 puppets to take care of the spirit fields, he could develop the entire secret realm. There was no problem with the supply of spiritual power. Taking care of the spirit fields consumed very little spiritual power. With the spirit gathering pearl, as long as there was sufficient spirit chi in the outside world, the spirit gathering pearl would not lack spiritual power. The puppets could continue working until they were damaged. Wang Daoyuan started refining level 1 puppets. The puppets could be divided into 3 parts: the outer layer, the core, and the connecting structure. The outer layer could be completely solved with the tool refining technique. This was not difficult for Wang Daoyuan. The core was to use Yellow Springs willow and other special materials to refine something similar to a human's sea of consciousness. The connection structure was to use the core to control the external channel, just like humans and birds, fish, and insects. With just a thought, he didn't need to consume his spiritual sense. His body would complete the thought. Puppets naturally needed a similar channel. Otherwise, if one were to rely solely on divine sense to control the puppet, no matter how strong the core was, it wouldn't be able to withstand it. The device that provided spiritual power was also a part of the connecting structure. The connection structure was rather complicated. There were tool patterns, array patterns, and some special patterns that were similar to the spiritual energy conversion device of the 4th grade flying warship. Of course, low-level puppets had fewer special patterns, so it was nothing to Wang Daoyuan. The most difficult thing was to find something similar to a soul in the core. He couldn't really catch a soul and put it inside. Naturally, it would not be easy to create something with some soul functions using other materials. For the first time, Wang Daoyuan didn't try anything too difficult. He only wanted to create a rank 1 puppet that could harvest spirit grains. The simpler the function, the simpler the tool inscriptions, formation inscriptions, and special inscriptions. The outer layer was nothing more than refining a pile of 1st grade magic tool parts and assembling them into a human shape. With Wang Daoyuan's current cultivation, refining a 1st grade magic tool was no different from playing around. In less than half a day, he finished refining all the outer layer parts of the puppet. Although the connection structure was slightly more difficult, there were fewer inscriptions that needed to be carved. For someone like him who could refine a 4th-grade flying warship alone, it was nothing. It only took him 4 hours to complete the refinement. The core wasn't difficult either. The inscriptions were mainly special. After all, it had to imitate a person's sea of consciousness. There were more special inscriptions, so it was much harder to refine than the outer layer and the connecting parts. Also, the core had special requirements for the materials. For ordinary cultivators, refining this was the most difficult thing. After all, the materials were hard to find. Of course, a rank 1 puppet couldn't stump Wang Daoist, who was a middle-stage Yuanian cultivator with 4th-grade elixir, tool, and talisman arrays. It only took him a day to complete the refinement of the puppet core. This was his first time refining, so he was still unfamiliar with it. Once he became more familiar with it, the refining time would be reduced by more than half. After these physical parts were finished, all that was left were the incorporeal parts. There was only a sea of consciousness without a soul, so it couldn't be used. Next, he had to refine a puppet soul. This thing was similar to a soul. In a puppet, it was equivalent to the souls of humans and other living creatures. When the puppet was doing something, it was completely up to the puppet's soul to command it. Refining a puppet soul required the use of a demon beast soul. All of its consciousness and instincts would be erased, and it would be transformed into an extremely pure soul. Then, the soul would be stored in the sea of consciousness. Using his divine sense, he would inscribe the tasks that the puppet needed to do into the soul. This method was very similar to ghost cultivation. The difference was that ghost cultivation dealt with human souls, while puppet cultivation dealt with demon beast souls. Because puppet cultivation required the erasure of all memories and instincts. If the soul was strong enough, the lower the intelligence, the better. It was more convenient to use a demon beast's soul than a human soul. Puppets couldn't use divine sense attacks, so the soul's strength wasn't high. For a rank 1 puppet soul, any beast's soul would do. Especially for this kind of relatively simple puppet, any unranked flying insect would suffice. Wang Daoist used the soul of an ordinary fish in the space of the spirit pearl. It only took him 2 hours to refine it into a puppet soul. If it was a high-level combat puppet, the difficulty of refining a soul would be especially high. Not only was the soul's strength required, but it also had to go through a long period of nurturing. During this period, a large amount of pure yin qi would be consumed. For the sword cultivator puppets in the Purple Star Palace of the 7 Stars Secret Realm, it was even more difficult to let the puppet's soul comprehend sword intent. Ordinary forces didn't have the confidence to refine a large number of puppets. Once the puppet soul was integrated into the puppet core that was refined in advance and all the parts were combined, the puppet would be formed. The entire puppet was about 3 feet tall. Its appearance was roughly that of a human, and it held a low-grade rank 1 scythe in its hand. The appearance didn't affect the function much, so he didn't spend too much time refining it. It looked rather rough. After that, Wang Daoist used his divine sense to awaken the puppet soul. The puppet began to move slowly. Basic movements such as walking and waving were not a problem. Wang Daoist put it into the space of the spirit pearl. In order to allow the soul-chasing bees to have a sufficient honey source at all times, the spirit grains in the space were planted at different times so that they would ripen at any time. After the puppet entered the space of the spirit pearl, it automatically looked for ripened spirit grains and waved the scythe in its hand to harvest them. In order to make it easier to refine, this puppet didn't have the function of threshing and storing grains. It was already a successful puppet that could identify ripened spirit grains and harvest them. Wang Daoist wanted to continue refining, but an uninvited guest suddenly appeared on the volcanic island. It wasn't a human, but a group of flying insects. He wasn't unfamiliar with these flying insects. They were the ghost worms that the Zhenhai sect's Soul Slayer released on Drifting Cloud Island. These guys were very good at hiding. Wang Daoist only discovered them when they were near the island. The ghost worms were good at searching. His whereabouts had already been exposed. His divine sense exploded and killed most of the ghost worms, but a few ghost worms that were further away escaped. These things were extremely fast. It would take a lot of effort to catch up to them. Moreover, the master of the ghost worms was definitely not far from here. He was afraid that he would encounter their master before he could catch up to them. Without knowing the strength of his opponent, it was better to avoid them for now. Chapter 781. Wang Daoyuan cleaned up the traces in the stone room and left the crater. He took out a 5th-grade flying boat and flew east. Less than a quarter of an hour after leaving this place, a flying boat came from the southwest and landed on this small volcanic island. 2 cultivators came down from the flying boat. One of them was wearing a black robe and was surrounded by death aura. He looked like an evil cultivator. The other person was wearing a white robe and looked like a righteous cultivator. The 2 of them scanned the crater with their divine senses. The black-robed cultivator smiled and said, "It seems that we didn't find the wrong place. That kid really escaped here. A righteous cultivator should be under 500 years old, but his body is so strong." Blood Sea Immortal cultivated the blood demon technique and refined his body with the blood essence of fierce beasts. His 800 years of cultivation were not as good as this person. In this situation, he might have a special physique or some fortuitous encounter. Of course, his body tempering technique is definitely not bad. Our Zhenhai sect has many kinds of techniques, but we don't have any superior body tempering techniques. His body tempering technique can actually restrain demonic cultivators and half-demons. If we can capture him and force him to give us the inheritance, we can make up for the lack of inheritance. With such a strong body, if we can refine him into a corpse puppet, he might be able to grow to the 6th level in the future. Elderly, if we can get this technique, we will be great contributors to the Zhenhai sect. The white-robed cultivator also nodded. This Wu Chuan once fought side by side with us, so he can be considered a friend. Our Zhenhai sect has never killed an ally. Force him to give us the technique and let him go. Elder Qi, I've already broken the sect's rules by agreeing to help you subdue him. If you must kill him, then I'll leave now. Elder Qi sighed. You people are too rigid. For the sake of the sect's revival, what's the point of sacrificing a rogue cultivator of unknown origin? Forget it, I won't argue with a stubborn donkey like you. As long as he obediently hands over the inheritance, I'll let him go. After saying that, he released a few ghost worms. The ghost worms circled around the island a few times and then flew east. Elder Qi said, "This kid ran east. We have to catch him as soon as possible. If we go further east, we will enter the territory of the White Bone Palace. At that time, we will inevitably encounter a lot of trouble." Elderly had no objections. The 2 of them boarded the flying boat and continued to chase eastward. Elder Qi continued to release ghost worms to confirm Wang Daoyuan's location. The flying boat they were on was of a higher grade than Wang Daoyuan's flying boat. Its speed was also much faster. The distance between the 2 parties was getting closer and closer. Half a day later, the Zhenhai sect's flying boat caught up with Wang Daoyuan in a sea without any trace of an island. Elderly walked to the bow of the boat and shouted, "Wu Dao, I'm Li Xingzong from the Zhenhai sect. Daoyu, please stop the boat for a chat." Wang Daoyuan walked to the stern of the ship and smiled. This place is already 200,000 li away from the Zhenhai sect. What brings Elderly here? Li Xingzong replied, "During the battle on Drifting Cloud Island, Dao Yu went missing. We were a little worried, so we sent people to look for him. After more than 10 years, we finally found him. Dao Yu, please return with us so that our 2 sects can work together to deal with the Demon Flame sect." This was pure nonsense. Not to mention an early-stage Yuanine cultivator, even a late-stage Yuanine cultivator wouldn't be worth so much effort. Elderly, I'm afraid you found the wrong person. I'm just a guest elder of the Golden Sand sect. No one has the right to interfere with where I want to go. I'm going to travel eastward. Dao Yu, please return. Elder Qi didn't have the patience and said angrily, "Elderly, this kid is a stone in a latrine pit. It's a waste of time to discuss things with him. Brat surnamed Wu, hand over your body refinement technique and I'll spare your life. If you don't blame us for snatching it." Only then did Wang Daoyuan understand that he had taken a fancy to his cultivation method. However, the 2 of them were only mid-stage Yuanine cultivators. They weren't enough. Your Zhenhai sect is a branch of the Imperial Regency. Is there a need for you to snatch a loose cultivator's technique? Besides, the imperial regency has always been upright in its conduct for tens of thousands of years. What's wrong? You're starting to attack your allies now? Or are you wearing the Zhenhai sect's skin and doing evil? Li Xingzong hurriedly said, "We have no intention of harming Daoyu. We're just doing this for the sake of the sect's inheritance. As long as Daoyu is willing to hand over your body tempering technique, I guarantee on my honor that we won't make things difficult for you." Wang Daoyuan sneered, "Daoyu Li, are you really ignorant of the ways of the world or are you just playing dumb? Which cultivator would hand over their technique so casually? I want your Imperial Regency's doppelganger soul nurturing technique. Are you willing to give it to me? If you're willing to give me the complete doppelganger soul nurturing technique in exchange, I don't mind handing over my body tempering technique." Before he finished speaking, Elder Qi scolded angrily, "Arrogant brat, how dare a loose cultivator like you covet our sect's inheritance?" Then he took out a mid-grade level 5 refined corpse. The refined corpse turned into a cloud of black gas and disappeared in an instant. A moment later, it appeared next to Wang Daoyuan's flying boat. Wang Daoyuan said in surprise, "Corpse puppet." Elder Qi was a little surprised. A loose cultivator actually knows about corpse puppets? 10 years ago, you were still a long way from reaching the mid-stage Yuaning. But now, you've already reached the mid-stage Yuaning. The Imperial Regency has been established for tens of thousands of years, and there are very few people like you. For a body refinement technique to have such speed, it seems like your inheritance is not simple. I'm even more interested now. Wang Daoyuan smiled but didn't say anything. He activated his divine power. All the spiritual energy within a radius of 400 miles instantly turned into the fire attribute. Outside the divine power domain, water attribute spiritual energy constantly surged in and turned into the fire attribute. He drew out a wisp of red yang true fire, and the area within a radius of 400 miles instantly turned into a sea of fire. The corpse puppet also had the characteristics of a refined corpse, so it was still extremely afraid of the pure yang qi in the flames. It naturally didn't dare to stay in the sea of fire for too long. It turned into a cloud of black smoke again and wanted to escape. But how could Wang Daoyuan let it do as it wished? He used the vermilion bird fire control technique to control the flames and turn them into a solid wall of fire to trap the refined corpse. Li Xingzong and Elder Qi wanted to make a move, but Wang Daoyuan condensed 2 vermilion bird phantoms again and used the power of the spirit fire to deal with them. This corpse puppet seemed to have been refined not long ago and couldn't withstand the heat. It only lasted for 100 breaths before it turned into a pile of ashes. Some metal materials fell out of the ashes. At the same time, the flying boat under their feet was also burned. After all, this thing wasn't a flying warship. It wasn't slow, but its defense was too weak. Li Xingzong cried out in surprise, "This is a domain divine ability? Wu Dao, the two of us had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Please forgive us, Dao." Wang Daoyuan smiled and said, "If you hand over the clone soul nurturing technique, I can spare the two of you. If you don't hand it over, see if your Yuanying can withstand the burning of this spirit fire." Elder Qi had a look of disdain. "Elderly, this kid is too arrogant. If you hand over the clone soul nurturing technique, you and I will die without a doubt when we go back. Rather than that, might as well take out your life-saving trump card. I don't believe that a divine ability can be strong." Although Elderly was unwilling to become enemies with Wang Daoyuan, he had no choice but to make a move. No one could bear the price of the core inheritance being leaked out. The two people were already surrounded by the sea of fire. They wanted to rush out several times but were blocked by the firewall. Suddenly, a swift and fierce sword energy broke through the firewall. A white-robed cultivator holding a silver sword appeared in front of Wang Daoyuan. This cultivator had a fierce killing intent all over his body. His spiritual power fluctuations were also very close to the peak of Yuanying, but there was no trace of life fluctuations. Wang Daoyuan immediately determined that this was a sword cultivator puppet. Although it was not as good as the one in the 7-star secret realm Ziwei Palace, it was not his match with just a divine ability domain. Elder Qi smiled and said, "Now you know how powerful the Zhenhai sect is, right? This sword puppet once killed a late-stage Yuanian cultivator. We underestimated your strength, but no matter how strong you are, you can forget about defeating the sword puppet and the two of us together. Hand over the inheritance obediently, and I'll leave your corpse intact and let your soul go to reincarnation. Chapter 782. Wang Daoyuan's face was full of disdain. Elderly, you've really given me a difficult problem. How about this? If you leave now, I won't kill you. If you continue to stay here, I'll have no choice but to leave you behind. Elder Qi mocked. We've all lived for nearly 1,000 years. What kind of tricks have we not seen? Don't use such childish tricks. Hand over the inheritance obediently and we'll save you some trouble. Li Xingzong also persuaded, Wu Dao, listen to my advice. Hand over the inheritance and I'll protect you from death. Although I don't want to fight you, I have to do this for the sect. Wang Daoyuan smiled. Li Daoyu, I appreciate your kind intentions. Don't worry, I'll let your soul reincarnate. Li Xingzong sighed and the sword puppet disappeared instantly. A silver light flew towards Wang Daoyuan like a meteor. Wang Daoyuan took out the sword of origin restoration and countless silver sword qi appeared out of thin air. Li Xingzong and Elder Qi felt the biting cold killing intent and their expressions changed drastically. It was as if someone had put a sword to their necks. With a swing of the sword, Wang Daoyuan and the sword puppet each retreated more than 30 meters with a clang. The sword puppet didn't suffer any losses, but a small crack appeared on the sword in its hand. Once a Dharma artifact was damaged, its power would weaken. If they continued to fight, the sword puppet's power would only become weaker and weaker. This sword puppet is not weak. It's actually able to fight on par with me. Li Xingzong's expression changed drastically. You're the sword cultivator Zhou Ming who sneaked into the Seven Stars Heavenly Palace in the Seven Stars Secret Realm to steal spirit herbs and finally entered the school of the Emperor Star to steal the inheritance? Don't make it sound so bad. What do you mean by steal? My sword cultivation inheritance is of the same origin as the school of the Emperor Star's inheritance. I'm more qualified than others to take the inheritance. It's you who stole it from me. I advised you to leave before, but you refused to listen. Now that I've exposed my identity, I can't let you leave. With that, he used the Azure Dragon life-stealing technique. Within a radius of 400 miles, all living creatures began to lose their life force. As the main targets, Li Xingzong and Elder Qi were greatly affected. As the sword puppet and Wang Daoyuan exchanged blows, the two vermilion bird phantoms continued to condense firewalls to suppress the two. After breaking through to the Yuanying stage, the lesser divine ability had become a divine ability. Its power had increased greatly, but the consumption of divine sense had decreased. Casting 3 spells at the same time consumed his divine sense twice as much as casting 1 spell. With this level of consumption, it wouldn't be a problem even if it lasted for 2 to 4 hours. However, while the two of them were being burned by the spiritual fire, they also had to constantly lose their vitality. They couldn't even hold on for 15 minutes. Wang Daoyuan executed void-splitting sword escape and attacked the sword puppet. He didn't plan to use the Demon Slayer sword to finish it off. The sword puppet was a rare treasure, and he wanted to keep it for his own use. It was already very difficult for a puppet to comprehend sword intent. It was impossible for it to become one with the sword. Without becoming one with the sword, as long as the long sword in its hand was destroyed, it wouldn't have much combat power left. After capturing it, he would remove the divided soul in the puppet's soul and add a new long sword to it. It could still continue to exert the strength of a late-stage Yuanying. After getting close, Wang Daoyuan kept attacking with his sword, aiming at the long sword in the sword puppet's hand. 30 breaths later, a few cracking sounds were heard, and the sword in the sword puppet's hand shattered into several pieces. Without the sword puppet could only exert 30% of its strength. Wang Daoyuan used the black tortoise purgatory to envelop the entire sword puppet and put it into the interspatial ring. He walked to Li Xingzong and Elder Qi with the sword and smiled. Now it's your turn to make a choice. Do you want to hand over the inheritance or die? Li Xingzong sighed and said, I was greedy and went against the teachings of the previous generations of patriarchs. You deserve to have your soul scattered, but if you want to get the inheritance out of my mouth, you're dreaming. Li Daoyu, there's no need to be so agitated. Actually, I'm also a disciple of the Imperial Regency. Back then, when the controlling spirit sect was destroyed, a Foundation establishment disciple escaped. I received his inheritance and cultivated a part of it. I'm also a disciple of the Imperial Regency. If you give me the inheritance, it won't be considered an outsider. Li Xingzong replied. When the Imperial Regency was destroyed, the disciples fled everywhere. There are countless cultivators who received the inheritance of the Imperial Regency. Even the Seven Stars Alliance has many inheritances. Are they all disciples of the Imperial Regency? If I give you the inheritance, I'll be making enemies for the sect. The two of us are no match for you. If you want to kill us, do as you please. You formed your nascent soul in the Seven Stars secret realm only 20 years ago. With such a cultivation speed, you can be considered a peerless genius. Why do you have to lower yourself to bicker with a prisoner like me? Seeing that he would rather die than speak, Wang Daoyuan didn't force him. You didn't want to kill me before. If I let your soul die, I'll be too immoral. It's related to my safety, so I can't let you go. Take back the soul fragment in the sword puppet. I'll only destroy your yuanying and let your soul reincarnate. If he forcefully took out the soul fragment, it might damage the puppet's soul and affect its function. It was safer to let its master take it out personally. Li Xingzong's face showed a glimmer of hope. Even if he couldn't keep his life, he didn't want his soul to die. He nodded. I refined this puppet myself. It's not considered betraying the sect. Wang Daoyuan took out the sword puppet and dispersed the black tortoise purgatory. With their abilities, they couldn't play any tricks. Li Xingzong didn't play any tricks. He took out a gray ball from the puppet and fused it into his body. There's no need for Daoyu to do anything. I'll disintegrate myself. He dispersed his protective qi and allowed the red sun primordial fire to burn him. Soon, his body was reduced to ashes. The yuanying was exposed with a bitter smile on his face. Wang Daoyuan immediately dispersed the red sun primordial fire around him. If he let it burn him, his soul would really be destroyed. Then, the yuanying collapsed, and an extremely dim purple-gold figure appeared. It was his soul. The soul quickly turned into a wisp of green smoke and dissipated with the wind. The soul returned to the netherworld, the body turned to ashes, and the 1,000 years of cultivation returned to heaven and earth. This situation didn't mean that the soul would be destroyed. Li Xingzong didn't walk the path of ghost cultivators, so he didn't suffer any attacks that targeted his soul. No matter how weak his soul was, it wouldn't be destroyed. Legend said that this wisp of green smoke would float to the netherworld and condense into a soul there to enter reincarnation. Wang Daoyuan tidied his clothes and solemnly cupped his hands at the green smoke. Farewell, Daoyu. Li Xingzong's interspatial ring wasn't destroyed, so Wang Daoyuan put it away. He turned to look at Elder Qi and asked with a smile, "Do you want your soul to be destroyed, or do you want to hand over the inheritance and enter reincarnation like Daoyu?" His smile was very kind, as if he was really asking for Elder Qi's opinion. However, in Elder Qi's eyes, this smile was the most terrifying thing in the world. He pretended to be tough and cursed. "Shameless brat, you want my sex inheritance?" Wishful thinking. Although Wang Daoyuan was much younger than him, the people he had seen were not few. When Li Xingzong forced him to hand over the inheritance, Li Xingzong meant to let him go if he handed over the inheritance. However, this guy wanted to refine him into a corpse puppet. At most, he would let his soul go. Now, he was only pretending to be like Li Xingzong. He thought that being tough would make Elder Qi think more highly of him and raise the price at the same time. This kind of person was extremely selfish. Most selfish people were extremely greedy for life and afraid of death. His usual ferocious look was just to cover up his cowardice. As long as the threat was big enough, he would sell everything. It was easy to deal with this kind of person. First, let him despair, then give him a chance to live. He would give him whatever he wanted. Wang Daoyuan gathered all the fire spiritual energy within the range of his divine ability to his side. Since you don't want to make a decision, I'll extract your soul and refine it. Let's see how long you can last. In the end, you can't escape and your soul will be destroyed. You didn't even leave your soul behind. Does the survival of the sect have anything to do with you? Chapter 783. Hearing this, Elder Qi's expression changed. He seemed to be thinking about something. As expected, this kind of person's mind was extremely unstable. He probed, "If I hand over the inheritance, can you let me live?" Wang Daoyuan sneered. "When you wanted to steal my inheritance, were you planning to let me live? Now you only have two choices. Either you suffer the pain of having your soul extracted and destroyed, or you obediently hand over the inheritance and disintegrate like elderly. As far as I know, cultivators at the Yuanying level and above will carry the legacy of this life with them in their next life. Most of them are extremely talented. If you can cultivate to the Yuanying level again, you will have a chance to awaken your past life's memories. Your cultivation talent isn't very good. You're already 1,000 years old and you're only at the mid-stage Yuanying level. Your chances of reaching the soul formation stage aren't high. It's not a big deal to give it up. You might as well cultivate again. Maybe you'll have a chance to reach the soul formation stage. If you force me to do it and damage my soul, I won't have these benefits when I reincarnate." It was precisely because of these benefits that for a nascent soul cultivator, being able to die by using a corpse was considered a rather honorable death. Elder Qi struggled for a long time before saying, "Fine, I can tell you everything you want to know. But you have to swear an oath. You can't go back on your word." "What a joke. I don't have any grudges with you. Why do I have to destroy your soul? By the time you reincarnate and reach the Yuanying level and awaken your memories, I'll probably be at the soul formation stage. Why would I be afraid of a Yuanying cultivator? I heard that destroying a person's soul will also damage their luck. I'm not a fool. Why would I damage my own luck to destroy your soul? As for swearing, I don't have the habit of being coerced. I definitely won't swear an oath for a prisoner. As long as he admitted defeat once, it would be difficult for him to be tough again." Elder Qi had already planned to compromise, so he naturally didn't dare to insist on swearing an oath. Wang Daoyuan gave him a blank beast skin book. These beast skins were refined from killing demon beasts while drifting on the sea. Record down all the legacies related to the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. Don't play tricks with me. All these years, I've collected quite a few legacies related to the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. Whether it's real or fake, I can tell at a glance. Elder Qi didn't reply and just focused on inscribing the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. Wang Daoyuan used the black tortoise purgatory to wrap him up and retracted his skill. He summoned the flying boat and continued to fly east with Elder Qi. A day later, Elder Qi completed the engraving. A 3-inch thick animal skin book was almost filled to the brim. He handed the beast skin book to Wang Daoyuan. "This technique is the core of the Imperial Regency. I've only seen the Yuanying period. As for the content of the soul formation stage, I really don't know. From Qi refinement to nascent soul realm, everything is here." Wang Daoyuan smiled. "It doesn't matter. As long as it's in the Yuanying stage, it's fine. There's no difference between the soul formation stage and the Yuanying stage. If you know the Yuanying stage technique, it won't be too difficult to deduce the soul formation stage technique. Wait for me to comprehend the content. If there's no problem, I'll let you go. If there's a problem, you know the consequences." Elder Qi nodded profusely, and Wang Daoyuan flipped through the entire book. Cultivators had a photographic memory and memorized the content after reading it once. After reading it, he closed his eyes and rested. It looked like he was trying to cultivate. In fact, he was controlling the clone in the space of the spiritual pearl to cultivate the doppelganger soul nurturing technique of the golden core stage. This technique was called the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. At first, it was just a spiritual consciousness cultivation technique. When he killed the evil cultivator back then, he obtained the soul-devouring soul nurturing technique, which could only be cultivated to the golden core stage. After countless Yuanying and soul formation stage cultivators improved it, it became a complete Yuanying technique. Not only was there a spiritual consciousness cultivation technique, but there was also a spiritual energy and blood cultivation technique. The name didn't change much. The entire technique was still focused on spiritual consciousness cultivation. It was just that the method of refining the clone was much more advanced. He didn't need to cut his own soul. Instead, he needed to extract a strand of his soul like how he made a soul lamp. This way, the soul wouldn't be permanently damaged and it would slowly recover. Then, he would use the power of his spiritual consciousness and pure yin qi to nurture a strand of his soul. He would gradually strengthen it and then merge it with the clone. Merging it with the clone didn't require any serious damage to the clone's soul. He only needed to use a secret technique to merge the nurtured soul into the original soul of the clone. The original soul of the clone would continue to nourish the original soul. In this way, the clone's soul wouldn't be severely damaged. There wouldn't be too many problems in cultivation and other aspects. It was just that the initial merging of the soul was too little and couldn't completely suppress the clone's consciousness. When the soul gradually grew to 1% of the original soul, the clone's consciousness would completely disappear. The restriction of the total number of soul fragments not exceeding 1/10 of the original soul still existed. If this restriction was exceeded, the clone's consciousness wouldn't be suppressed. If the soul fragments were retrieved and merged with the original soul, it could indeed make up for the loss of one's soul and heal soul injuries. However, the higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it was to heal soul injuries. Extracting a strand of soul and nurturing a component soul wasn't something that could be done casually. At the very least, one had to be at the Violet Palace realm. There was also a huge flaw in refining a clone. It couldn't be used against cultivators at the Yuanying realm and above. This was because a Yuanying cultivator's soul had already merged with their blood, and true essence. A soul fragment couldn't invade their soul at all. If one wanted to refine a clone, they had to start with cultivators at the Yuanying realm and below. Because these cultivators' souls weren't severely damaged, they could still break through to the Yuanying realm. However, it wasn't worth the effort to cultivate a clone to the Yuanying realm. With such resources, it was better to cultivate the sect's disciples. Therefore, Yuanying cultivators rarely used living people to refine clones. Instead, they used demon beasts to refine clones. To refine a clone, the soul fragment had to be merged with the soul fragment without severely damaging the clone's soul. There had to be a method to attack the soul fragment and make the clone lose its ability to resist. At the same time, it had to prevent the opponent's soul from being severely damaged. This cultivation technique also came with a divine sense attack technique called the White Tiger Soul Subduing Roar. It imitated the roar of the divine white tiger and intimidated the opponent's soul. It was similar to Wang Daoyuan's self-created tiger soul subduing roar technique. However, this technique was much more advanced and powerful. It could make the soul enter a state of unconsciousness. This cultivation technique came with many secret techniques, but they were all related to the soul. Among them were methods to refine puppets and corpses, as well as insights on how to control them. There were also many divine sense secret techniques that could threaten Yuanying cultivators. For example, soul extraction and soul refinement, which could be used against Yuanying cultivators. The clone in the space of the soul pearl tried to use the complete doppelganger soul nurturing technique. He used a wisp of his soul to cultivate a soul fragment. His clone's soul had been severely damaged. It was impossible to cultivate the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. However, it was still possible to test its authenticity. Wang Daoyuan's main body was carefully comprehending the Yuanying stage cultivation technique of the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. After half a day, the clone was barely able to cultivate the embryonic form of a soul fragment. However, it wasn't very stable. This meant that there weren't any major problems with the Yuanying stage and below. He had a few Yuanying cultivation techniques to refer to. Naturally, he knew what was good for him. The contents of the Yuanying stage cultivation technique of the doppelganger soul nurturing technique could withstand scrutiny. It was obvious that this was the result of countless generations of deductions. No one would waste a huge amount of manpower and resources to deduce a wrong cultivation technique to fool others. Even if there were some problems, it wouldn't be a big deal. He wouldn't cultivate this cultivation technique directly after obtaining it. Instead, he would use it to improve his own cultivation technique. Wang Daoyuan opened his eyes and smiled. Daoyu didn't fool me. There are no problems with this cultivation technique. I can release your corpse, but before that, I want to ask you a question. The Imperial Regency was so powerful back then. How did it fall? There are many rumors in the outside world, but they are all vague. Your Zhenhai sect is a branch of the Imperial Regency. You should know a lot of inside information, right? Chapter 784. Wang Daoyuan had always been curious about that. The Imperial Regency had the doppelganger soul nurturing art, so how many soul formation cultivators could do? They had dominated the Qixing-Si Xiuxin community for tens of thousands of years, so they should have a lot of resources. After traveling in the Qixing-Si Xiuxin community for years, he had a lot of understanding about the strength of the Imperial Regency. The Imperial Regency was at its peak before it was destroyed. There were 5 soul formation cultivators who showed up frequently. Including those who were in seclusion all year round and those who never showed up, there were at least a dozen of them. Even if the leading forces in the Seven Stars Alliance worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat the Imperial Regency, let alone take over their headquarters. Elder Qi sighed. These things aren't a secret among the older forces, but they've been hiding it from the rogue cultivators. With Daoyu's strength, it's only a matter of time before he learns about these things. More than 7,000 years ago, the Grand Elder of the Imperial Regency, Divine Lord Yufeng, reached the peak of the soul formation stage. Besides, he was a spirit body cultivator and was only 3,000 years old at that time. Soul formation cultivators had a lifespan of 5,000 years. 3,000 years old was the prime of their life and their potential hadn't been used up yet. But the entire Qixing-Si Xiuxin community, including the Endless Ice Sea and the Demon's Islands, didn't have a level 7 spirit meridian or a level 7 spiritual item, so it was impossible for him to reach the Mahayana level. However, there was a dangerous place thousands of miles to the east of the Qixing-Si Xiuxin community called Song Dragon Ruins. It was said that there was a huge level 7 spirit meridian and a lot of level 7 spiritual items there. There was only an ancient teleport array that connected the two places, which was controlled by the Imperial Regency. Divine Lord Yufeng went to Song Dragon Ruins through this teleport array. When he reached the Mahayana level, he might be attacked by beasts. He only brought 2 late-stage soul formation cultivators with him to Song Dragon Ruins. It wasn't important to Wang Daoyuan how the Imperial Regency was destroyed, but that Song Dragon Ruins was very valuable. With a level 7 spiritual pulse, he could break through to the Mahayana realm. There was no upper limit to the lifespan of a Grand Ascension cultivator. Even though there was a chance that a Grand Ascension cultivator would experience the tribulations of their essence, energy, and spirit if they lived for over 10,000 years. However, it wasn't impossible to overcome this tribulation. As long as one could withstand this tribulation, they would be able to live a long life. This was the highest pursuit of every cultivator, so he had no choice but to take it seriously. Wang Daoyuan quickly interrupted, "What's up with the Blue Dragon Ruins? Tell me in detail." Elder Qi had an awkward expression on his face. "How can I explain this clearly? Everything about the Blue Dragon Ruins was left behind tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, the Qixing-Si Xiuxin community still had Mahayana cultivators. They could tear the void and perform space jumps. Hundreds of thousands of miles to millions of miles was no different from a single step to them. It was not difficult to travel between the Sea of Seven Stars and the Blue Dragon Ruins. Almost all the legends about the Blue Dragon Ruins were left behind from that era. Since the Qixing-Si Xiuxin community lost its Mahayana cultivators, no one could travel to the Blue Dragon Ruins. There were many cultivators who went to the Blue Dragon Ruins through the teleportation formation, but none of them came back alive. Now that tens of thousands of years had passed, no one cared about the Blue Dragon Ruins anymore. After all, the Zhenhai sect was not the Imperial Regency, so they didn't know many secrets. They only heard that there were many remains of divine beasts there, and most of them were true dragon skeletons. That's how the Blue Dragon Ruins got its name. As for the details, I don't know. Wang Daoyuan was also a bit disappointed. He said, then continue to talk about the Imperial Regency's destruction. Elder Qi nodded slightly and continued, although the Imperial Wind Lord left secretly, there's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. There were spies from other sects in the Imperial Regency, and the news was leaked decades after the Imperial Wind Lord left. If the Imperial Wind Lord succeeded in his breakthrough, the Imperial Regency would be able to unify the entire Qixing Xiaoxian community. The other forces would either become vassals or be destroyed. Naturally, the soul formation cultivators would have no way to survive. Coincidentally, the Jadeite Sword Sect's Imperial Wind Lord also reached the peak of the soul formation stage. Also, he didn't have much time left, so he was determined to fight before he died. Under his instigation, several forces with deity transformation cultivators hit it off and decided to take advantage of the situation and destroy the controlling spirit sect. The other forces in the Qixing Xiaoxian community had the same motive, just like the Beiyuan Xiaoxian sect. After Lei Yanzhenren reached the Yuaning level, the Divine Weapon Pavilion immediately became the leader of the human race in Beiyuan. If it weren't for the restriction of the Ancient Mighty, the Divine Weapon Pavilion could easily unify Beiyuan. The Sea of Seven Stars didn't have any restriction of the Ancient Mighty. Once a Mahayana cultivator appeared, they would definitely expand. Also, a Mahayana cultivator didn't have a lifespan. They had endless years to slowly unify the Sea of Seven Stars. Wang Daoyuan asked again, even if the Imperial Wind Divine Lord took away 2 soul formation realm cultivators, it shouldn't be a problem for the Imperial Spirit Sect to defend their territory given their wealth. Why were they destroyed so easily? Elder Qi sighed. Wasn't it because there was a mole? At that time, a Grand Elder of the Imperial Regency had a grudge with the Imperial Wind Lord. He was afraid that the Imperial Wind Lord would deal with him after he broke through and cut off his lineage. He betrayed the Imperial Wind Lord when the Imperial Wind Lord tested him. They colluded with both inside and outside and let some demon beasts cause trouble in the outer sea, attacking the Imperial Regency's properties and luring the Imperial Regency's soul formation cultivators away. Then, they worked together to take down the Imperial Regency, killed the sect master and a Grand Elder who stayed behind, and destroyed the foundation of the Imperial Regency. Even the teleportation formation to the Canglong ruins was destroyed, so the Imperial Wind Lord couldn't return at all. Those soul formation cultivators who were transferred out had no choice but to escape to various places to protect themselves without the protection of the sect. There were still many Imperial Regency cultivators hiding in various secret realms, but they didn't know what was going on outside, so they didn't dare to act rashly. In the end, these forces were the ones who asked for it. After they succeeded, they slaughtered the Imperial Regency's affiliated cultivators. They forced these forces to unite and fight against them. The Alioth Sword Sect and other sects also had many conflicts in order to fight for the territories left by the Imperial Regency. The remaining forces of the Imperial Regency also took the opportunity to come out and had the tendency to turn the tables. The Alioth Sword Sect and other sects had no choice but to unite all the forces that had a grudge with the Imperial Regency and formed the Seven Stars Alliance. The two sides fought for more than 2,000 years before the current situation gradually formed. Wang Daoyuan asked, "Where's the Imperial Regency's soul cultivation wood? I heard that it didn't fall into the hands of the Seven Stars Alliance." Elder Qi shook his head. There are many different theories about this. There are more than 10 theories now. There are 3 credible ones. First, it was taken away by the Imperial Wind Lord. Second, it fell into the hands of a certain force of the Seven Stars Alliance, but they didn't say anything. Third, the leader of the Imperial Regency at that time felt that things were not going well, so he asked someone to take the soul cultivation wood away and transplanted it to a secret realm in the outer sea. The other theories are not credible. Some say that it was taken away by low-level Imperial Regency disciples during the chaos. No one can be sure of the specific situation. I've told you everything I know. Can you release my body now? Wang Daoyuan dispersed the black tortoise purgatory. I'm a man of my word. You can end your own life. Hearing this, Elder Qi's expression was very complicated. There was helplessness, sadness, and the joy of relief. After a long silence, he said self-deprecatingly, I've been fighting for fame and fortune for thousands of years, but in the end, I'm all alone. I don't even have any incense after death. My 1,000 years of cultivation is gone in a day. My 1,000 years of dream is nothing more than nothing. Hopefully, I can cultivate to the Yuanying realm in my next life and awaken the memories of this life. Don't continue to head east. That's the territory of the demonic cultivators, the White Bone Palace. The White Bone Palace is domineering. Dao Yu will easily cause conflict if you go there. I should be on my way. Goodbye. Wang Daoyuan smiled. You finally understood. I wish Dao Yu the great Dao in your next life. Elder Qi threw the universe ring to him. Then, black flames ignited on his body. His physical body quickly turned into ashes. The Yuanying realm also quickly collapsed. A purple-gold soul appeared. It nodded at Wang Daoyuan and turned into a puff of green smoke. Chapter 785. At the same time, at the Xianxia sect, a golden core disciple ran into the meeting hall in a panic. He cupped his hands to the white-robed cultivator sitting on the main seat and said, Sect Master, Elder Qi's soul tablet is also broken. Everyone in the hall was surprised. A long-bearded cultivator stood up and said, Elder Li and Elder Qi went out together, but they died about 2 days apart. Maybe there's something wrong with this? The white-robed cultivator on the main seat asked, Can you confirm where they died? The golden core disciple answered, I can only confirm that they died in the northeast direction, more than 200,000 miles away. I can't confirm the specific location. The sect master nodded. You can leave. After the golden core disciple left, the sect master asked, Vice sect master, did Elder Li and Elder Qi say anything before they left? The long-bearded cultivator answered, When they reported to me, they only said that they were looking for an inheritance for the sect. Elder Qi also left with more than 10,000 ghost worms. It's been 10 years. I don't know where they went. However, Elder Li had a 5th-grade upper-grade sword puppet, and Elder Qi also had a 5th-grade mid-grade corpse puppet. The two of them were equivalent to a late-stage Yuanying cultivator and 3 middle-stage Yuanying cultivators. In this case, even if they encountered a peak-stage Yuanying cultivator, they could still protect themselves. The place where they died was more than 200,000 miles to the northeast of Xianxia Island. It's close to the territory of the White Bone Palace. The two elders were probably surrounded by the White Bone Palace. Otherwise, they would have escaped. The sect master nodded. It's very likely. However, there are soul formation cultivators in the White Bone Palace. We can't act rashly. Let's take care of the Demon Flame sect first. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan was on a flying boat heading towards the northwest. He didn't want to offend the White Bone Palace, but he didn't have a good place to go. Instead of taking risks, it was better to go to familiar places, such as the Fire Lotus Island. There were many volcanoes there. Any 5th-grade upper-grade volcano could satisfy his cultivation needs. Besides, it was quite lively there. He needed to collect a lot of materials for refining weapons and elixir pills. When he returned to Xiuxian, it would be very useful. When looking for refining materials, it was best to go to a more prosperous place. As the window connecting the myriad demon islands and the Sea of 7 Stars, the Fire Lotus Island was pretty good in this aspect. Wang Daoyuan was checking Li Xingzong and Elder Qi's belongings. Elder Qi's interspatial ring still contained a bunch of nether soul worms. Wang Daoyuan originally wanted to raise them, but it would be nice to raise another type of spirit insect. However, he didn't expect the cultivators of the Xianxia sect to be so mean. This large group of ghost worms were all male. They were already adult insects and wouldn't listen to orders at all. There was no point in keeping them, so they were all disposed of. This was also a method that large sects used to prevent their own spiritual insects from leaking out. They would only bring male spiritual insects when they went out. Even if they were robbed, the spiritual insects would not be used by their enemies. Both Li Xingzong and Elder Qi were quite wealthy. They had more than 100,000 high-grade spirit stones on them. There were also 40 to 50 nascent cultivating pills, 2 Tier 4 mid-grade longswords, and more than 10 healing pills. The two of them didn't have any high-level cultivation techniques or dharma spells with them, but they each had some insights on their own cultivation. These things would be of great help to Wang Daoyuan in improving his cultivation technique. The biggest gain from this trip was the doppelganger soul nurturing technique and the sword puppet. Needless to say, the doppelganger soul nurturing technique was better than the origin returning record in terms of cultivating one's consciousness. If he could integrate the advantages of this cultivation technique into the 5 spirits immortal transformation technique, it would be of great help to perfect his cultivation technique. The sword puppet was also quite valuable. If he encountered a strong enemy, he wouldn't need to expose his sword cultivation techniques. Although the long sword was destroyed, Wang Daoyuan didn't lack it. Previously, when he killed young Master Huang, he obtained a Tier 5 upper-grade longsword. It was just nice to give it to the sword puppet. Wang Daoyuan now had 8 doppelgangers. 3 of them were in Beiyuan Xiaoxian, and 5 of them were in the space of the spiritual pearl. He could still have 2 more doppelgangers. It just so happened that he could plant a split soul in the sword puppet soul. He also followed the new method in the doppelganger soul nurturing technique and separated a strand of his soul from the yuaning. Then, he consumed a few drops of the 7-leaf ghost face flower's dew. He used the dew's medicinal effects and spiritual energy to nourish his soul. Previously, in order to solve the problem of overflowing spring water, the spiritual fields in the north of the spiritual pearl were all planted with spiritual plants that absorbed yin qi. Now, the 7-leaf ghost face flower had been planted in 5 mu of land. Although the 7-leaf ghost face flower was only a Tier 4 upper-grade spiritual plant, it was a little slow for Wang Daoyuan, a mid-stage yuanine cultivator. However, it was still quite useful for increasing the cultivation of one's consciousness. Moreover, the 7-leaf ghost face flower could grow to Tier 5. The current level of spiritual energy in the space of the spiritual pearl had already reached Tier 5 upper grade. If it could reproduce in the space of the spiritual pearl for a few more generations, it would have a chance of evolving. Under the nourishment of the flower dew, a strand of his soul quickly grew to the point where it could be integrated into a doppelganger. Wang Daoyuan integrated it into the sword puppet soul. The sword puppet itself did not have self-consciousness, so there was no problem that the split soul could not suppress the doppelganger. After putting the sword puppet into the space of the spiritual pearl, it only took half a day for the split soul to completely control the sword puppet. In addition to some battle memories, there was also a small gray mist sword in the sword puppet soul. Wang Daoyuan was naturally not unfamiliar with this thing. This was sword intent. The sword puppet sword intent was killing, which was the same as Wang Daoyuan's Guiyuan sword intent. When controlling the sword puppet, it could display extremely strong strength. Moreover, Wang Daoyuan could let the split soul comprehend the sword puppet's sword intent. When the split soul merged with the main soul in the future, it could also strengthen his own Guiyuan sword intent. This was extremely beneficial to the improvement of the Guiyuan sword intent. Wang Daoyuan let the sword puppet stay in the thatched cottage in the space. The Guiyuan sword diagram that he obtained from the 7 Stars Mystic Realm's Purple Star Hall was also hung in the thatched cottage. Since the sword puppet did not need to cultivate, he let it slowly comprehend the Guiyuan sword diagram. It was left behind by the Guiyuan sword Immortal and contained countless sword intents. Wang Daoyuan had not had much time to comprehend it. Now that he had the sword puppet, it was easy. Although the sword puppet's soul had low intelligence, it could comprehend the killing sword intent. It could also continuously strengthen its sword intent comprehension by comprehending the Guiyuan sword diagram. There was a large amount of yin qi and flower dew in the space of the spiritual pearl, which could continuously strengthen the sword puppet soul. In addition to the flow of time in the space, comprehending the sword Immortal's sword intent would always be beneficial. There were more and more uses for the spiritual pearl space. If he refined a few more sword puppets in the future, his sword intent would definitely improve rapidly. After drifting on the sea for more than half a month, Wang Daoyuan came to Fire Lotus Island again. After leaving for more than 10 years, the island did not seem to have changed much. It was still very lively. Wang Daoyuan came to the market at the north end of the island. He entered the Kai Yang restaurant and inquired about the news. The cultivators here were very mixed. There were people from all over the place. Naturally, there was all kinds of news. Wang Daoyuan ordered a few dishes and 2 jars of wine. He listened to the cultivators in the restaurant bragging. A muscular middle-aged rogue cultivator drank a bowl of wine and said to the cultivator at the same table, "A few years ago, I went to the devil-slaying island to explore. The situation there was not good. The righteous sects Zhenhai sect and Golden Sand sect joined forces to deal with the Devil Flame sect. However, they were still at a disadvantage. The 2 sects joined forces to wipe out the demonic cultivators and half-demons who were harassing their businesses. They did not expect to jump into a trap. The Zhenhai sect lost 5 Yuanying early-stage cultivators. The Golden Sand sect lost a powerful guest elder. Once these 2 sects fall, we righteous rogue cultivators will not be able to survive in the myriad demon islands. There is no place for us to stay in the Sea of 7 Stars. The myriad demon islands will also be difficult. We will be like stray dogs." Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan felt relieved. It seemed that Emo Liangping and Du Zhe had escaped. The Golden Sand sect's ancestral hall would definitely have a memorial tablet of Wu Chuan. At another table, 2 Yuanying mid-stage rogue cultivators were talking about the rare treasure island. A rogue cultivator said, "The rare treasure island's once-in-a-century auction will be held in 10 years. Every time the auction starts, rare treasures will appear. I wonder what good things there will be this time." Chapter 786. An itinerant cultivator at the same table laughed. "Why are we worrying about this? Every time a high-grade spiritual item appears, the 7 Stars Alliance, Blood Shark, and Mystic Island will fight for it. Itinerant cultivators can't even touch it. It's already good enough for us to have more than 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. But with so few spirit stones, we can only buy low-grade level 5 Dharma artifacts. Those treasures have nothing to do with us." That person picked up a bowl of wine. "Yes, there are so many good things in this world, but what does it have to do with us? If we want to continue cultivating, we have to exchange our lives for resources." Wang Daoyuan was interested in this auction. When he was at Rare Treasure Island, he had asked about the auction that was held once every 100 years. However, he didn't get any detailed information, but he heard a lot of rumors. For example, there were half-divine beast eggs and level 7 spiritual tree saplings that appeared in the auction. However, this auction was backed by the 7 Stars Alliance and Blood Shark. Mystic Island would also send people to participate. The real good things had already been divided among the 3 sects and couldn't be brought to the auction. The spiritual items that could be brought out were not the best. These spiritual items were used as gimmicks to attract other cultivators. Even these gimmicks would be fought over by the 3 sections. The itinerant cultivators could only get some leftovers. However, these leftovers were very tempting to Wang Daoyuan. After all, he was only a mid-stage Yuanying cultivator, and level 5 spiritual items were very useful to him. Those big sects wouldn't be interested in level 5 spiritual items. When the time came, he could go to Rare Treasure Island to bid for spiritual items that the big sects didn't want. He didn't have a clear goal at the moment. Although the Blue Dragon Ruins was very tempting, he didn't dare to go there now. Soul Formation cultivators couldn't even come back if they went there. He would be courting death if he went there. He wasn't even prepared to break through to the Soul Formation realm, so there was no point in thinking about the Blue Dragon Ruins. He would rather try his luck at the auction and see if he could get a valuable spiritual item. In any case, he was going to return to the Mystical Treasures Island. Previously, he was forced to leave the Myriad Demons Islands by the Huang clan. He couldn't just let it go like this. With his current strength, if he used the Sword Cultivation spell and the Sword Puppet, he would be able to fight against a peak Yuanying cultivator who did not have any divine powers. Even if he couldn't win, he could make his opponent unable to do anything to him. As a semi-divine beast, Old Master Huang's Blood Flood Dragon definitely had some divine abilities. Since he was able to make the blood flood dragon submit to him, there was a high possibility that he had a divine ability. If he really had a divine ability, Wang Daoyuan wouldn't be a match for him at the moment. He had just made a breakthrough in his cultivation, so it was impossible for him to make any significant progress before the auction. However, there were other methods to increase his strength, and that was the three treasures tool nurturing technique. Once he developed an artifact spirit, his strength would rise to another level. After eating and drinking his fill, Wang Daoyuan planned to find a place to stay. As soon as he walked out of the restaurant, a late-stage golden core cultivator came up to him and said, "Senior, what would you like to buy? I have stayed on this island for more than 100 years, so I know all the shops here very well." There were also cultivators like brokers on the Fire Lotus Island, but they were not professional brokers. Moreover, their cultivation wasn't low, and they were at least late-stage golden core cultivators. There were also quite a number of Yuanian cultivators. These people were usually pill refiners and tool refiners, and they weren't particularly brilliant. Relying on pill refiners and tool refiners wouldn't be able to earn enough resources. After pill refiners and magic tools were refined, they needed a long time to be nurtured. If they were idle during this period, it would be too much of a waste. Therefore, when rogue cultivators were nurturing pill refiners and magic tools, they would usually come out to do other things to earn resources. Among them, there were quite a number of brokers. Wang Daoyuan replied, "Help me find a house with a fire eye. I can buy or rent it." The cultivator quickly replied, "There are many volcanoes on the Fire Lotus Island, so it is very convenient to open a fire eye. There aren't many other places, but there are many residences with fire eyes. Most of the residences in the southern part of the market have fire eyes, and their prices aren't high. Senior, please follow me. I guarantee that you will find a house that you will be satisfied with." Wang Daoyuan took out 2 high-grade spirit stones. "Lead the way." The golden core cultivator took the spirit stones and led the way with a smile on his face. Wang Daoyuan was only staying here temporarily, so he didn't have high requirements. In the southeast corner of the market, he found a relatively spacious house with no neighbors. The owner of this house should have met with an accident when he went out, and the house had already been taken back by the market manager. The broker then invited the manager of the market, and Wang Daoyuan used the price of 300 high-grade spirit stones to buy the house. After sending the broker away with a dozen high-grade spirit stones, he activated the defensive formation and officially moved into the house. There wasn't much room for improvement in his cultivation at the moment, so he would have to rely on the 3 treasures tool nurturing technique to increase his strength. The E-wood essence was still lacking, and Wang Daoyuan was too lazy to wait for it to grow slowly. The fire eye in the house emitted a mid-grade 5th-level fire spirit chi. Wang Daoyuan drew out a wisp of scarlet yang true fire and placed it on the fire eye. Then he extracted the spiritual fire essence from the scarlet yang true fire and refined it into his body. He used the 5-spirit immortal transformation technique to convert the spiritual fire essence into wood attribute, and then poured it into the E-wood essence. The 5 elements essence could store a large amount of spirit energy, and now there was no problem pouring this spirit energy into it. After integrating a large amount of mid-grade 5th-level spirit energy, it could naturally increase its grade faster. After 2 years, the E-wood essence finally leveled up under the nourishment of a large amount of spirit energy. The 5 elements essence had reached or surpassed mid-grade 5th level, and he could finally use the 3 treasures tool nurturing technique. Wang Daoyuan took a 3-inch long section from each of the 5 elements essence. Then he needed to use his divine sense to carve extremely complicated inscriptions on them. These inscriptions didn't belong to pill, tool, or talisman arrays. Instead, they were similar to the spirit energy conversion device on the flying warship and the special inscriptions in the puppet technique. Although these inscriptions were complicated, he had a lot of experience. It took a full half a year to condense the special inscriptions on the 5 pieces of 5 elements essence. The things cultivated by the 3 treasures tool nurturing technique were invisible, and the 5 elements essence was only a temporary carrier, so there was no need to forge it. The next step was to polish it, and he needed to integrate a large amount of spirit energy, divine sense power, and qi and blood into these 5 magic tool embryonic forms. After another half a year, these 5 magic tool embryonic forms could no longer absorb the slightest bit of power. Wang Daoyuan could also communicate with the magic tool embryonic forms and could command them at will. At this point, he hadn't succeeded in refining them yet. He still had to integrate his own laws into the magic tool. If he wanted them to use the power of the 5 elements divine beast, he had to integrate the 5 elements divine beast's charm that he had comprehended into them. In the following time, the 5 elements essence gradually melted and turned into pure 5 elements spirit energy. 3 years later, the 5 elements essence completely disappeared. The 5 magic tool embryonic forms had completely turned into a mass of energy, and this was the most critical time to transform into a tool spirit. Next, he had to integrate it into the vision between Yuanying's eyebrows to nurture it. Only by forming the tool spirit in the vision could he ensure that the tool spirit could fully mobilize the power of the vision in the future. The final goal was to completely integrate the vision with the tool spirit. The vision was closely related to a cultivator's divine ability. If the tool spirit and the vision merged, the power of the divine ability could also be integrated into the tool spirit in the future. The 5 masses of energy merged into the Yinglong mark between his eyebrows and did not encounter the slightest rejection. Wang Daoyuan continued to extract spirit energy from the fire eye and integrated it into Yuani. After being refined by the spirit energy seed, it was injected into the Yinglong mark. One day after 2 years, a violent fluctuation of the power of laws suddenly appeared between Yuanying's eyebrows. Then, the fluctuation became smaller and gradually disappeared. Wang Daoyuan clearly felt that there were 5 things similar to the tool spirit of the purple gold exquisite pagoda between Yuanying's eyebrows. Of course, they were far from being true tool spirits. Which true tool spirit didn't need hundreds or thousands of years to be nurtured? Now, they could barely be considered the embryonic form of a tool spirit and could be integrated into the magic tool to increase its power. Chapter 787. The 3 treasures tool nurturing technique was a shortcut to condensing a tool spirit. The time required to nurture a tool spirit was much less than other methods. Even so, it was very difficult to nurture a mature tool spirit without 100 or 200 years of hard work. Wang Daoyuan summoned the 5 little fellows from the Yinglong rune. 5 balls of light the size of a longan floated out. The balls of light emitted the aura of the 5 elements divine beasts. One could even vaguely see their shadows. After the balls of light flew out, they approached the Yuanying and stuck to the Yuanying's body. These tool spirit embryonic forms already had simple spiritual intelligence. However, they were still far from Linglong, who liked to talk big and put on airs. Not only were their spiritual intelligence incomparable, but their strength was also incomparable. Linglong could unleash the power of a Yuanying cultivator on her own without the command of her master. However, these 5 tool spirit embryonic forms did not have the ability to fight on their own. Linglong was already over 100,000 years old. After countless generations of nurturing, her foundation was still a level 7 Dharma artifact. Even the Dharma artifacts of soul formation cultivators could not reach this level of tool spirit. He controlled the green balls of light and fused them into the Tsang Dragon Pearl to perform the Tsang Dragon Restoration technique. With the help of the tool spirit embryonic forms, the healing effect was increased by about 20%. He then fused the silver balls of light into the white tiger blade. He gently swung the blade and slashed the ground. The power was increased by about 30%. This was normal. After all, the main purpose of the 3 treasures tool nurturing technique was to nurture a sword spirit. It was reasonable that it would be more powerful when used on a longsword Dharma artifact. Then, he fused the other 3 balls of light into the corresponding Dharma artifacts. The power was increased by about 20%. Wang Daoyuan was very satisfied with this result. With his original strength, he could already defeat most late-stage Yuanying cultivators. Now that his strength was increased by 20 to 30%, he might not be at a disadvantage even if he fought against a peak-stage Yuanying cultivator. Wang Daoyuan also tried to fuse the 5-tool spirit embryonic forms. With a thought, the 5 balls of light stuck together and emitted a dazzling light. Then, the 5 balls of light fused into a bright yellow ball of light the size of an egg. It emitted Yinglong's aura. Unfortunately, they didn't last long before they scattered. It wasn't enough to be used against the enemy, but it was fine as long as it could be fused. After all, these were only the embryonic forms of artifact spirits, and they would slowly grow in the future. After that, Wang Daoyuan absorbed the artifact spirit into the Yinglong rune and continued to nurture it. There were still about 2 years left before the once-in-a-century auction on Rare Treasures Island. It would take about half a year to travel from the Fire Lotus Island to the Rare Treasure Island. Now, there was still a year and a half to increase his strength. Apart from nurturing the artifact spirit, there was no other way to improve it quickly. Now that the prototype of the artifact spirit had been formed, all that was left was to polish it. The current embryonic form of the artifact spirit was like a child, and its growth speed was not limitless. It was impossible to increase his growth rate by 10 times just by feeding him for 10 days. It should be enough to nourish it for a couple of hours every day. For the rest of the time, Wang Daoyuan spent it on refining. The Sword of Origin was not completely suitable for him. In the future, he would have to modify the Sword of Origin so that it would be compatible with Yinglong. To modify the Sword of Origin, the requirement for refining was extremely high. At the very least, he would have to be a rank 5 blacksmith. All these years, he had refined some artifacts, but he had never tried to refine a rank 5 artifact. Now, he could give it a try. The difference between a rank 5 artifact and a rank 4 artifact was not only the artifact rune, but also the forging method. The artifact rune also needed to be forged using the forging method inside the artifact rune. However, forging the artifact rune was not something that could be learned by oneself just because one had a good comprehension ability. A lot of practice was necessary. Having a high comprehension ability only made it easier for one to grasp the trick and take fewer detours. Among the rank 5 lower grade artifacts, the shield was the most valuable. Wang Daoyuan started with the shield and used some rank 5 Tai divine gold to forge the shield's artifact embryo. After practicing forging day and night for more than a year, he finally succeeded in forging a 5th-ranked artifact embryo without any obvious flaws. Next was the inscription of the artifact rune. This process was the most crucial, but it did not take much time. 5 days later, the artifact rune was inscribed, and the artifact was 90% complete. The last 10% was in the nurturing stage. There was still more than half a year before the auction at Rare Treasures Island, so he had to leave for Rare Treasures Island. He placed the inscribed artifact rune into the artifact cauldron and stored it in the spirit pearl space. He then placed it on the Tai golden flame to be burned. Wang Daoyuan took the flying boat and headed north. He brought the sword puppet and Chen Zhaoi out of the space. Chen Zhaoi was in charge of driving the flying boat, while the sword puppet was in charge of guarding against demonic beasts. His Yuanying entered the Spirit Pearl's space and personally guarded the artifact cauldron. Whether he could become a rank 5 artifact master or not depended on this shield, so he could not afford to lose it. Although Yuanying could not cultivate inside, it was not a problem for her to control the flames. More than a year passed in the space, and the artifact forging cauldron continuously emitted rank 5 spiritual energy waves. Wang Daoyuan's face lit up with joy as the artifact forging was completed. He dispersed the flames in the artifact cauldron and took out a palm-sized silver shield. He used his divine sense to examine the entire shield, but did not find any obvious flaws. He let the blood flame clone attack the shield with all his strength, but the shield was not damaged at all. Blood Flame was a blood demon in the late gold core stage. His full strength attack could not cause any damage to the shield. The strength of this shield had far surpassed a rank 4 upper grade artifact. It was undoubtedly a rank 5 artifact. Wang Daoyuan was overjoyed as he finally became a rank 5 artifact master. His artifact forging level was not inferior to Master Lei Yan's. A year had passed in the space, but only a few days had passed in the outside world. The flying boat was still far from Rare Treasures Island. Yuanying returned to her body every day and nurtured the artifact spirit for 2 hours. The rest of the time, she stayed in the spirit pearl's space and studied how to modify her natal artifact. Half a year later, the flying boat was thousands of miles south of Rare Treasures Island. There was also some progress in modifying the artifact spirit, but it was not urgent. Yuanying came out of the spirit pearl space. Wang Daoyuan personally controlled the flying boat and put his clone and sword puppet into the spirit pearl space. The flying boat landed outside the southern city gate of Rare Treasures Island's market. Wang Daoyuan kept the flying boat, flashed his token and walked in. He came back not only to participate in the auction, but also to find trouble with the Huang family. Naturally, there was no need to hide his identity. The 2 gold core stage cultivators guarding the gate were shocked, but they did not dare to say anything. They only took out a jade talisman, as if they were sending a message to someone. After Wang Daoyuan entered the market square, he went straight to his own small courtyard. The array was still intact, and no one was staying there. He took out the token that controlled the array and opened a hole in the courtyard door. Nothing changed in the courtyard. Not long after he returned to the courtyard, someone came to visit him. This person had white hair and a white beard, and the spiritual energy on his body was ethereal. Wang Daoyuan immediately realized that this person's cultivation was far above his own. At the very least, he was at the peak of Yuanying. Looking at his face, he looked similar to young Master Huang. This person should be Old Master Huang. Since Old Master Huang came according to etiquette, there was no need for him to refuse. If they really fought, it was unknown who would win, so there was no need to be afraid. The defensive light barrier opened up a hole at the entrance, allowing them to enter. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands and said, "May I know the reason for Daoyou's visit?" Old Master Huang's expression was unsightly. He said casually, "How can you not know the reason for my visit? To be able to cultivate from early Yuanying to mid-Yuanying in such a short time, you can be considered a rare genius. There is no need for you to lower yourself and play such small tricks. You killed my son. You should know that a life for a life, right?" Wang Daoyuan said with a smile. To be able to cultivate to Yuanying, you must have killed at least a few thousand cultivators. Do I have to pay with my life for all of them? Who is your son? Why should I kill him? This question was reasonable. After all, he was being chased by young Master Huang. He had no choice but to kill him. In terms of morality, what he did was reasonable. Chapter 788. Lord Huang was at a loss for words. After a while, he said, "You can only blame yourself for robbing my Huang family." Wang Daoyuan sneered, "I don't think your Huang family's ancestor was a rogue cultivator. He must have been a pirate, and a vicious one at that. I won the water essence fair and square. What does it have to do with your Huang family? You don't have the ability to pay a high price, yet you want to take it for free. What? Did your Huang family set the rules of the Sea of 7 Stars? You're only a peak Yuanying cultivator, yet you're already so tyrannical. If you break through to the deity transformation stage in the future, I'm afraid you won't even put the 7 Stars Alliance and Shueisha in your eyes. You haven't even reached the point of dominating a region, yet you want to do so. It seems your Huang family isn't far from extinction." Wang Daoyuan's words made Lord Huang burn with anger, but he couldn't say anything reasonable. His whole body emitted powerful spiritual power fluctuations as if he was ready to attack at any time. "How my Huang family does things isn't up to a brat like you. No matter what reason you have, you must pay with your life for killing my son." Seeing that he was being unreasonable, Wang Daoyuan chuckled. "You're so arrogant and despotic. The Huang family's extinction is imminent. Lord Huang, do you want to make a move now or wait until I leave?" Lord Huang snorted coldly. "A brat like you isn't worth it for me to violate the market square's rules. I'm only here to see what kind of person dares to go against me. As for taking your life, there's no need for me." With that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Wang Daoyuan didn't care. If he didn't do it himself, then he could only send the late Yuanying cultivator from the Huang family or ask someone from the assassin organization to do it. The assassin organization could only send someone at the late Yuanying stage. A peak Yuanian cultivator was the master of a region. Who would come out to do the dirty work? Ordinary late Yuanian cultivators would only be throwing their lives away. Wang Daoyuan closed the formation in the courtyard and returned to the earth fire room to cultivate. There was still half a month before the auction. Before he dealt with old Master Huang, he had to raise his strength as much as possible. In particular, the nurturing of the artifact spirit could not be neglected. Half a month passed quickly. He left his house and walked towards the city center. The big auction was held at the Seven Stars Auction House in the center of the market, and the power behind it was the Seven Stars Chamber of Commerce. The Seven Star Chamber of Commerce was originally a large force. Although it couldn't be compared to the Imperial Regency and the Jadeite Sword Sect, its strength could still be ranked in the top 5. After the Imperial Regency was overthrown, the Seven Stars Alliance and Blood Shark stood side by side. The Seven Stars Chamber of Commerce could only survive in the cracks, and their business deteriorated. He had no choice but to reach an agreement with the two families. The Seven Star Chamber of Commerce allowed the two families to invest in some of their businesses. Since Rare Treasure Island was the balance point between the two forces, the Seven Stars Auction House naturally had shares of the two forces. When Wang Daoyuan arrived at the entrance of the Seven Stars Auction House, two peak-stage golden core cultivators cupped their fists and invited him in. As soon as he entered the door, a young female Foundation establishment cultivator walked over and bowed. "Greetings, Senior. Please follow me." After this bow, Wang Daoyuan's qi and blood became a little unstable. He sighed in his heart. The Seven Stars Chamber of Commerce was really inhumane. They didn't even give a complete set of clothes for such a big business. If the weather was cold, she would freeze to death. He originally wanted to save her from the fire pit, but after thinking about it, he didn't have the guts. He could only look at this female cultivator helplessly, but he was powerless. He followed the female cultivator to the second floor of the auction house. All the auctions had the same layout. The first floor had a large number of seats, but not all of them were golden core cultivators. Early-stage Yuanian cultivators also sat on the first floor. Wang Daoyuan's mid-stage Yuanian cultivation was barely qualified to sit in the private rooms on the second floor. When he arrived on the second floor, some of the private rooms were already occupied by late-stage Yuanian cultivators. After waiting for half an hour, late-stage Yuanian cultivators came one after another. Finally, a peak-stage Yuanian cultivator came. He was no stranger to this person. It was old Master Huang. This person's status on Rare Treasure Island was not low. Since he came in, the surrounding cultivators took the initiative to greet him. After he sat down in a private room, he scanned the surroundings with his spiritual sense. Then his spiritual sense locked onto Wang Daoyuan and he sent a mocking voice transmission. "You really came for this big auction. What good things can a rogue cultivator like you get in this kind of auction? You will only lose your life here." Wang Daoyuan was too lazy to pay attention to him. He now had close to 400,000 high-grade spirit stones in his hands. It was not a problem to bid for some 5th-grade high-grade spirit objects or even 6th-grade spirit objects. When old Master Huang, a peak-stage Yuanian cultivator, arrived, the auction began. A purple-clothed mid-stage Yuanian female cultivator walked to the auction stage at the center of the first floor. Wang Daoyuan sighed in his heart. This seven-star Chamber of Commerce is so crazy that even Yuanian cultivators are being abused like this. A Yuanian female cultivator was more than enough to be a soul formation cultivator's Dao companion. Who would have thought that she would still be naked here? Wang Daoyuan was fine, but the peak-stage golden core cultivators and early-stage Yuanian cultivators on the first floor were already head over heels for her. The Yuanian female cultivator said, "I am Ziyan. Greetings, Daoyu. Today, I am honored to host this once-in-a-century auction. Thank you, Daoyu, for coming here." Her voice was like the sound of nature, and all the cultivators present were intoxicated. The seven-star Chamber of Commerce really knew how to do business. With just this auctioneer, wouldn't they spend tens of thousands of high-grade spirit stones during the auction? Then, a maid walked to the front of the auction stage with a jade box in her hand. Ziyan took the jade box and placed it on the stage. As soon as the jade box was opened, a fragrant smell wafted out. Inside the jade box was a fruit that looked like a baby. This fruit was about 5 inches tall and looked like white jade. Its aura and appearance were similar to the nascent formation fruit, but there were also obvious differences. The nascent formation fruit was only 1 inch tall, but this fruit was 5 inches tall. Moreover, the nascent formation fruit was a mid-grade 5th grade spirit fruit, but this spirit fruit had already reached the limit of high-grade 5th grade and was only a step away from the 6th grade. Ziyan smiled, and the cultivators on the first floor also laughed foolishly. After a few breaths, Wang Dayuan's smile disappeared and he looked at the cultivators below with disdain. What a bunch of ignorant people! What are they laughing foolishly for? I believe that many cultivators recognize this item. This is the nascent formation fruit, but it's not completely the same. The 5-inch nascent formation fruit is called the nascent replenishing fruit. It is produced when the nascent formation fruit tree is severely damaged and unable to recover. This nascent replenishing fruit also has a core. In a suitable environment, it can grow into a new nascent formation fruit tree. A single tree can produce at most 3 nascent replenishing fruits, and in most cases, only 1 or 2. This fruit also has the same effect as the nascent formation fruit, but it's not limited to that. As cultivators of our generation, it's hard to avoid fighting with others, and getting injured is also unavoidable. Yuanying cultivators' yuanying is still too weak and can easily be implicated, leaving behind hidden injuries. Furthermore, mistakes in cultivation, poisoning, taking too many medicinal pills, and so on can cause damage to the yuanying. Yuanying's hidden injuries will affect one's cultivation, especially when making a breakthrough. It's easier to encounter a bottleneck. Many yuanying cultivators are unable to break through their bottlenecks and can only slowly pass away. This nascent replenishing fruit can heal all of the yuanying's hidden injuries and can also increase one's yuanying's potential. If one takes a nascent replenishing fruit when making a breakthrough, it can greatly increase one's chances of breaking through. Even if a peak yuanying cultivator breaks through to the deity transformation stage, the nascent replenishing fruit will increase one's chances of success by 10%. The starting price is 100,000 high-grade spirit stones, and each increment must be no less than 5,000. In large-scale auctions, the first item was usually a good start. Who would have thought that the first item would be a rare treasure like the nascent formation fruit? What kind of treasure would the finale be? Wang Daoyuan didn't have much hope for this item. Ordinary nascent formation fruits cost around 30,000 high-grade spirit stones. This nascent replenishing fruit size alone was worth 10 nascent formation fruits. Coupled with its special effects, it definitely wouldn't be worth 400,000 high-grade spirit stones. Chapter 789. In every centennial auction, the inside information would not be revealed to rogue cultivators. Wang Daoyuan had just arrived at Rare Treasures Island, so he did not have time to ask around for any gossip. He also did not know what good things would appear later on in the auction. However, since the first treasure was the nascent replenishing fruit, no one would be surprised if any other spiritual items appeared later on. As soon as Ziyan finished speaking, many cultivators began to bid. Of course, these cultivators were all from the private rooms on the second floor. Very few cultivators on the first floor could take out 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Master Huang was naturally among them, and he was the first to bid. 150,000. His words stunned cultivators like Wang Daoyuan who didn't have much of a backer. Those who dared to continue bidding with him were only cultivators from the major factions. Among them, Wang Daoyuan also saw a few familiar faces from the Seven Stars Heavenly Palace. For example, True Lord Rampaging Sea of Blood Shark and True Lord Lifeless of the Alioth Sword Sect were also here. Back then, Wang Daoyuan could not resist them, but now it was hard to say. Even if they had divine abilities, they might not be a match for Wang Daoyuan. If they did not have divine abilities, they would just be casually killed. The two of them were naturally not afraid of Master Huang, and True Lord Rampaging Sea directly said, 200,000. True Lord Lifeless followed. 250,000. They increased the price by 50,000 each time, and the others did not have the courage to participate at all. Thus, the auction became a battle between Master Huang and the cultivators from the various great powers. Master Huang was unwilling to let go of the auction. In the end, he won the nascent replenishing fruit at the price of 550,000 spirit stones. Although the nascent replenishing fruit was extremely valuable, it was not to the point where it was necessary. The value of this fruit was to repair Yuanying's internal injuries and to cultivate the fruit into a nascent fruit tree. It did not directly increase the success rate of breaking through to the soul formation realm. Instead, it was because the nascent replenishing fruit healed Yuanying's internal injuries and increased Yuanying's potential. When breaking through to the soul formation realm, the nascent replenishing fruit only played an auxiliary role. Unless the Yuanying was seriously injured, it would not affect the breakthrough to the soul formation realm without this fruit. However, just this nascent replenishing fruit and no other spiritual items were absolutely not enough. The value of the core was not as high as he had imagined. Cultivating a nascent soul fruit tree was not a simple matter. It would take a few thousand years, and a huge amount of resources would be invested during this period. There would be no returns, and if they were not careful, all their previous efforts would be wasted. Although the Huang family's influence wasn't small, it wasn't likely that they could compare to the Seven Stars Alliance and Blood Shark. He fought so hard for this item. Could it be that Yuanying had a serious internal injury that would affect her breakthrough if she did not recover? If that was the case, Wang Daoyuan would have more confidence in dealing with him. The remaining auction items were more ordinary. They were all elixirs, magic tools, and rare refining materials. They were far inferior to the nascent replenishing fruit. However, these things were actually the most expensive. The 7-star Chamber of Commerce's honey trap was a great success. With just a few words, the cultivators on the first floor desperately fought for these things. After more than 10 magic treasures, yet another female Zifu disciple walked up with a metallic book in her hands. Seeing that it was a book-type treasure, everyone's interest was immediately piqued. The 7-star Chamber of Commerce had auctioned many book-type treasures, including cultivation techniques, magic techniques, secret techniques, pill refinement inheritances, and so on. Ziyan took the book and smiled. Everyone, Dao should know that the book-type treasures auctioned by the 7-star Chamber of Commerce are all extraordinary. This treasure is also the same. It isn't that it is precious, but that we are unable to determine its value. At this time, an early Yuanying cultivator asked, "Oh? There is something that the 7-star Chamber of Commerce cannot understand?" Ziyan took advantage of this opportunity to reply, "Dao Yu is too kind. There are many good things left behind in the ancient era. It is normal for there to be things that we cannot understand. We are unable to determine the value of this book. It is not because it is difficult to understand, but because we do not recognize the words on it. Our Chamber of Commerce also has many elders who like to study all kinds of languages. They all feel that there is a clear connection between these words and the words of the Qixing Si Xiuxin community, but there is also a large difference. Those elders have studied it for a long time, but they have only been able to deduce the meaning of a few words. Unfortunately, they are unable to connect them together. Other than the words, there are also many pictures. It is just that there are many special words in these pictures that we are unable to recognize, so we are unable to accurately determine the contents of the pictures. Our 7-star Chamber of Commerce has never cheated. Since we are unable to determine the value of this golden book, we will use the price of the materials as the starting price. This golden book's starting price is 100 high-grade spirit stones. For Dao Yu, you can raise the price as much as you want. After saying this, she opened the first page of the book for everyone to see. The cultivators all shook their heads. They were unable to recognize the words on the book. As for Wang Daoyuan, he was greatly shaken. The words on the book were clearly the traditional characters of his previous life. In his previous life, he learned from his master, so he could not recognize the simplified Chinese characters as well as the traditional Chinese characters. On the second page were the words, Kunlun Idler's Travels in the Sea of 7 Stars. Previously, in the Ascension Valley, he saw many engravings left by predecessors. It was certain that in the world of his previous life, cultivators would eventually ascend to this world. However, those engravings were severely damaged, so he was unable to obtain complete information. It seemed that this book should have been left behind by an ascendant. Although he had never heard of the name of the Kunlun Idler, to be able to ascend to this place, his cultivation was at least at the peak of the soul formation realm. Naturally, something left behind by such a senior was very valuable. Because they were unable to recognize it, the cultivators of the various forces were naturally not interested. On the contrary, the rogue cultivators on the first floor were the first to start bidding. They used this golden book as a means to win the favor of the beauty. Soon, the price of this golden book was called to 10,000 high-grade spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan naturally would not let go of this golden book. The value of something left behind by a cultivator at the peak of the soul formation realm was needless to say. He directly called out 11,000 high-grade spirit stones. At that moment, Old Master Huang laughed disdainfully. "I thought you were someone important. I didn't expect you to be so useless." Wang Daoyuan was worried that someone would suspect him of recognizing the words on the golden book. Old Master Huang's belittling words actually helped him cover up. He immediately retorted, "I'm not even 500 years old. Among the Yuanian cultivators, I'm still considered young. Young people are naturally different from old people like you. I'm willing to spend spirit stones to win the beauty smile. What can you do about it?" Old Master Huang was choked speechless. He could only coldly snort. He directly raised the price by 1,000 high-grade spirit stones. Those participating in the bidding were all early Yuanian cultivators. Naturally, they did not dare to compete with him in terms of wealth. After calling out the price 3 times, Ziyan smiled and said, "Congratulations, Dao. You've won this golden book." Wang Daoyuan also smiled and returned the greeting. This made the cultivators on the first floor extremely envious. After the golden book was won, the value of the treasures in the auction skyrocketed. A female Violet Palace realm cultivator carried a box made of spiritual wood to the front of the auction stage. Ziyan opened the box and took out a piece of folded beast skin. "This is a treasure map. My 7-star Chamber of Commerce's elder deduces that the place recorded on the map should be the Setting Sun Abyss. Some young Dao, you might not know much about the Setting Sun Abyss. Legend has it that in ancient times, there was a golden crow that fell at the border between the northern part of the Sea of 7 Stars and the Endless Ice Sea. Furthermore, the Setting Sun Abyss just so happened to have a yin vein. It formed a treasured land where yin and yang intersected. It gave birth to countless natural treasures. Dao, you all know that to break through to the soul formation stage, one would need a 6th grade yin and yang spirit item. In the Qixing Sea of Xiaoxian community, these 2 types of spirit items were rare. The Setting Sun Abyss just so happened to have these 2 types of items. However, the Setting Sun Abyss was extremely dangerous. Many soul formation cultivators had never returned. If one had a treasure map, entering the Setting Sun Abyss would be even safer. There was no need to say anything more about the value of this treasure map. The starting price is 50,000 high-grade spirit stones. Each bid must be at least 1,000 spirit stones higher. Chapter 790. Wang Daoyuan had heard of the Setting Sun Abyss before. Back then, the 10,000 corpse spiritual master had escaped and was forced into a dangerous place. That dangerous place was the Setting Sun Abyss. In the end, he escaped through a teleportation formation and headed west. Wang Daoyuan would have to go there sooner or later. Back then, the 10,000 corpse spiritual master had rushed in recklessly, but he had still been able to find the teleportation formation and escape. He was a Yuanian cultivator and knew the approximate location of the teleportation formation. What problem could there be? Of course, it would be best if he could get the treasure map. With the treasure map guiding him, it would be easier to find treasures. That was in the sea. Even soul formation cultivators would find it difficult to find spiritual items. Blackie and the soul-chasing bee's ability to find spiritual items was useless in the sea. Moreover, the golden crow had fallen from the Setting Sun Abyss. With the treasure map, he might be able to find spiritual items related to the golden crow. The scarlet-feathered crow in the spirit pearl space had already reached the peak of high-grade tier 4. If he could get a spiritual item related to the golden crow, he might be able to make the scarlet-feathered crow's bloodline purer and advance. After reaching tier 5, a half-divine beast's strength would increase greatly. At that time, the scarlet-feathered crow would also be a great help. As soon as Ziyan finished speaking, Master Huang said, 60,000. This time, there were quite a few people competing with him. The rogue cultivators and cultivators from small factions on the second floor all made bids. The bidding price of this treasure map was quickly raised to 150,000. The Alioth Sword sect and Blood Shark didn't make a bid. Wang Daoyuan understood that the two sects must have seen the treasure map beforehand and even left a copy. There was no need to make a bid now. Master Huang was very active in bidding. The 7-Star Business Alliance most likely didn't inform him. Wang Daoyuan naturally didn't want to give up on the treasure map. He directly shouted, 180,000. Once that was said, no one made a bid. What was in the treasure map was still unknown. It was very likely that it had no value. Buying it would mean taking a great risk. 150,000 high-grade spirit stones was the limit for most cultivators. However, Wang Daoyuan had no choice. He probably couldn't afford the rest of the items. If they missed out on this treasure map, they would have wasted their trip to this auction. Old Master Huang also sneered, "Thank you, little friend, for snatching such a good thing for me." This meant that he wanted to snatch the item away, but Wang Daoyuan didn't take it seriously. He was also thinking about Old Master Huang's soul-replenishing fruit. No one continued to bid, and Ziyan announced that the treasure map belonged to Wang Daoyuan. Next up was a burly cultivator. He held a wooden box that was 4 feet long and 1 foot wide and walked up to the auction stage. Ziyan opened the wooden box, and a burst of killing intent was released. Inside the wooden box was a low-grade tier 6 sword. In Wang Daoyuan's senses, this long sword had a strong killing sword intent, and it could even imitate the Guiyuan sword intent. Ordinary people would not be able to tell. Dao, you must have heard about what happened in the 7-Star Mystery Realm. An early Yuanying sword cultivator barged in, and his sword intent resonated with the items in the Ziwei Palace. The 7 Stars Alliance, Shui Sha, and Daoyu from Profound Ice Island opened the Ziwei Palace's defensive formation together with that sword cultivator. Unexpectedly, that sword cultivator barged in first and stole some of the treasures in the Ziwei Palace. This sword was one of the stolen treasures. It was said that the Ziwei Palace was extremely spacious. Everyone only entered on the last day of the trial. They encountered many low-grade tier 6 puppets blocking their way, but they didn't get much good stuff in the end. Most of the treasures in the Ziwei Palace weren't taken out. This long sword also had a sword intent that could break through the Ziwei Palace's formation. If they could obtain this sword and comprehend the sword intent within it, the next time the 7-Star Mystery Realm opened, they might be able to enter the Ziwei Palace again. The reason why the major factions of today could rise was because they could obtain some inheritances and treasures from the 7-Star Sky Palace. Back then, the Imperial Regency was like this. They obtained a soul cultivation wood from the Shunnong Pavilion of the 7-Star Sky Palace and gradually rose to prominence. This sword is a key to enter the Ziwei Palace. The 7-Star Chamber of Commerce can't determine its value. Therefore, there is no starting price for this sword. Dao, you can bid as you wish. This sword was definitely fake. Wang Daoyuan didn't know if the others had brought out any magic weapons from the Ziwei Palace. Even if they had, they wouldn't sell them. Besides, the 7-Star Chamber of Commerce, the 7 Stars Alliance, and Blood Shark were all in cahoots. If there really was such a good thing, outsiders wouldn't be able to see it at all. This might be a trap set up by the Alioth Sword sect of the 7 Stars Alliance and Blood Shark. The rewards for this scam were extremely generous. Many people were willing to take the bait, especially those non-top factions, such as the Mizar sect and the Divine Pill sect. They weren't weak either. There were soul formation cultivators in their sects, but they were still inferior to factions like the Alioth Sword sect. In addition, There were factions like the Huang family that had hopes of producing a soul formation cultivator. They had the ambition and potential to advance further. The only thing they lacked was a foundation. If they could obtain the inheritance of the Ziwei Palace, their foundation would be replenished. As expected, even though they knew the possibility of this being a scam was very high, there were still people who were willing to jump into this trap. As soon as Ziyan finished speaking, Master Huang hurriedly bid 100,000. There were also a few late-stage Yuanian cultivators who also hurriedly bid. There was also a familiar person among the bidders. It was the female shopkeeper of the Scarlet Flame sect. The Scarlet Flame sect had a few peak-stage Yuanian cultivators. It could be said that it was the strongest sect under the major factions. The Alioth Sword sect, the Tianji Palace, the Tianshu sect, and Blood Shark only casually bid twice and didn't participate in the competition. It was obvious that this was a trap set up by these four factions. Even the other factions of the Seven Stars Alliance were just part of the scheme. Wang Daoyuan also shouted, 200,000. Soon, Master Huang bid again. 250,000. He sighed softly and pretended to be a little regretful. Master Huang, on the other hand, let out a proud laugh. Next, Wang Daoyuan watched as these people competed to jump into the trap as an outsider. This scam was killing two birds with one stone. Not only could they make a killing, but they could also weaken those factions that were a threat. They had to put all their effort into this lousy sword to prevent them from developing too quickly and threatening the position of the person who set this up. The Huang family and the cultivators of the Seven Stars Alliance desperately bid. In the end, the female shopkeeper of the Scarlet Flame sect bought the long sword for a sky-high price of 970,000 high-grade spirit stones. A low-grade 6th-tier longsword wouldn't exceed 200,000 high-grade spirit stones at most. Now, it had been sold for nearly 1,000,000 high-grade spirit stones. Wang Daoyuan was very envious. He even wanted to make a copy of the origin returning sword painting and sell it. Now that the long sword had an owner, the next auction item was brought up. This was a heavily damaged puppet that had no value in repairing. Wang Daoyuan recognized this puppet at a glance. It was the first puppet he encountered after entering the Ziwei Palace. Ziyan continued, this puppet also came from the Ziwei Palace. It's one of the puppets guarding the Ziwei Palace. When this puppet was complete, it was a high-grade 5th-tier spirit stone and very close to a low-grade 6th-tier spirit stone. The 7 late-stage Yuanian cultivators who entered the Ziwei Palace worked together and fought for more than 2 hours before defeating it. True Lord Traversing Sea and True Lord Lifeless, who participated in the battle, were also here. Whether it's true or not, we'll know after asking. True Lord Lifeless said, Ziyan, Daoyo's words are true. I left a sword mark on the puppet's back. True Lord Traversing Sea also smiled. This puppet was refined from 6th-tier materials, and its refining method is far superior to the Imperial Regency's. Hearing the two's words, the others were even more convinced. With them echoing each other, Wang Daoyuan saw the problem. No matter how he looked at it, this puppet seemed to be throwing out bait to catch him. They should also know that he had a puppet inheritance, so this puppet could be used as a reference. For someone who wanted to refine a puppet, it was very attractive. Chapter 791. Wang Daoyuan already had a sword puppet, which was far more valuable than an ordinary puppet. Although the refining method wasn't very good, it was enough as a reference. As for this puppet, even if it didn't have any tricks up its sleeve, it wasn't worth spending a lot of money on it. Ziyan continued, although this puppet is heavily damaged, it's not impossible to repair. After it's repaired, although its strength won't be as strong as a soul formation cultivator, it'll be far stronger than a peak Yuanian cultivator. For cultivators who practice the art of puppetry, with this puppet, they'll be able to achieve twice the results with half the effort. These words were very tempting, but none of the loose cultivators or small factions made a bid. Refining a puppet wasn't something a small faction could do, let alone a loose cultivator. Not to mention other things, just the special materials needed to refine the puppet's core were something small factions couldn't find. Only mid-tier factions and above had some hope. Only the Seven Stars Alliance, a few of the weaker factions, and Blood Shark's true Lord Rampaging Sea participated in the bidding. The Imperial Regency had inherited the art of puppetry, so if they took it back, they had a good chance of repairing it. The puppets in Ziwei Palace must be extraordinary in some way. It was also very valuable to improve their own puppetry techniques. The small factions naturally couldn't compete with the Seven Stars Alliance, so true Lord Rampaging Sea bought the puppet for 600,000 high-grade spirit stones. Ziyan continued, "The puppet already has an owner. Next up is the last treasure of this auction." She clapped her hands, and a female cultivator quickly came over with a jade box. Ziyan took the jade box and gently opened it, and a dense dragon chi spread out. Inside the jade box was a black egg about 5 inches in diameter. There were faint golden patterns on it. These patterns were extremely complicated and seemed to contain some kind of power similar to the laws. Moreover, it was clearly much stronger than the power of laws. The power contained within was also very complex, as if there was more than one kind of power. What Wang Daoyuan could analyze was only a kind of power that was similar to the law of water. Without a doubt, this was a flood dragon egg. Furthermore, the concentration of his bloodline was extremely high. His parents' cultivation was definitely not low either. In a private room next to Wang Daoyuan, a late-stage Yuanine cultivator exclaimed, "The egg of a 6th-grade deep-sea ink flood dragon. If it hatches, it will become a 6th-grade sect-guarding spiritual beast in the future." Ziyan smiled and said, "Daoyu is right. This is indeed the egg of a deep-sea inky flood dragon. It was found by a late-stage Yuanine Daoyu at the bottom of the Sea of 7 Stars, a million li south of the Sea of 7 Stars. Daoyu, please don't worry. This distance is far enough, and the flood dragons won't come looking for trouble. After being appraised by our 7-star Chamber of Commerce's elders, the life force contained in this flood dragon's egg is very strong and can definitely be hatched. I'm sure everyone is familiar with the deep-sea inky flood dragon, as it's a true semi-divine beast. In the ancient times, the situation of the deep-sea dark flood dragon breaking through to the 7th level and becoming a divine transformation realm true dragon appeared many times. Even a rank 6 flood dragon had a lifespan of 20 to 30,000 years. As long as it can be nurtured, it will be able to guard the family and the sect for more than 20,000 years. Soul formation cultivators who can defeat a rank 6 flood dragon are also very rare. A human needs extremely high talent and all kinds of spiritual items to break through to the soul formation stage. Flood dragons are different. As long as there is enough spirit chi, they can slowly grow. They don't need any special spiritual items to break through to the next level. There was nothing wrong with what he said, but it was more like nonsense. A spirit beast with the bloodline of a divine beast didn't need any spiritual items to grow, but it also needed a very long time. Take the deep-sea ink flood dragon for example. Without a lot of spiritual items, it would take at least 10 to 20,000 years to grow to the 6th level. If he wanted it to grow quickly, he would need a lot of spiritual items. Normal forces couldn't afford it at all. Wang Daoyuan had no problem raising a flood dragon with the space in his spiritual orb, but he couldn't afford it. However, he couldn't afford the flood dragon. As the final treasure, it would cost at least 1,000,000 spirit stones. Besides, even if he could get it, it would be very troublesome. After all, the Qixing Sea Xiuxing community was mainly based on the sea. The demon beasts there were much more powerful than those in Beiyuan. The flood dragons were the overlords of the sea. If the flood dragon egg was sold, it would be easy to be attacked by the flood dragons. The auctioneer said that he got it in the outer sea. Who knew the details? He might be surrounded by the flood dragons at any time. Ziyan continued, "The starting price of this flood dragon egg is 300,000 high-grade spirit stones. Each increment must be no less than 10,000. The starting price was enough to make most of the cultivators despair. Only those cultivators with powerful backgrounds could afford to buy this item. Even so, the competition was very fierce. The price soon exceeded 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. Master Huang didn't dare to bid again after a few times. In the end, Perfected Lord Raging Sea bought the Flood Dragon egg for 1,300,000 high-grade spirit stones. Ziyan bowed to everyone and said, "Thank you, Dao. The auction is over." Then, one by one, the Yuanian cultivators delivered the treasures to the buyers. 2 Yuanian cultivators also came to Wang Daoyuan's box. They brought the Kunlun Idler's travel book on the Sea of 7 Stars and the treasure map of the setting sun abyss. He took out 191,000 high-grade spirit stones and gave them to the 2 Yuanian cultivators. After the 2 checked the spirit stones, they gave the treasures to him. Wang Daoyuan put the treasures in the space of his spirit pearl and walked out. Master Huang sent him a mocking sound transmission. "Brat, you're in such a hurry to leave?" He didn't want to be outdone. "No hurry. I'll leave when you eat the nascent replenishing fruit. If you don't eat it, I don't care. You only have 300 years to live. I still have 1,000 years to live. Let's wait and see." After saying that, he left the auction house and returned to his small courtyard. He couldn't leave immediately. After all, if he bought the travel book, people might suspect that he knew the words in it. If he left in such a hurry, there would be even more people who would suspect him. There might even be busybodies who would try to kill him on the way. It was already very difficult to deal with Master Huang. If a few peak-level Yuanian cultivators came, he would really die. It was better to stay in his small courtyard for a while. Moreover, he still had many things to do. He already had some progress on improving his life-bound Dharma artifact. He still had to complete it as soon as possible. If he could improve his life-bound Dharma artifact, his strength would increase even further. After returning to his small courtyard, he modified the defensive array formation. After all, it had been more than 20 years since he last modified it. The array formation should have been figured out long ago. Those people might use the formation-breaking pearl again. After he finished modifying it, he returned to the earth-fire room and began to refine his Dharma artifact. Before he started refining his life-bound Dharma artifact, he still had to refine it into a normal Dharma artifact to see its effects. In the space of his spirit pearl, his clone checked the treasure map and the travel book. There was nothing wrong with the treasure map. The environment around the setting sun abyss was similar to what was described in the beast skin book given by Uncle Zhong. The main content of the treasure map was the underwater part. There were a few important points marked on the map, and it was also written that it produced insights. There were also places that produced rank 6 yin-yang spiritual items. Unfortunately, they were all in the deep sea. With Wang Daoyuan's current strength, he could go down, but he couldn't stay for too long. This was an essential item for breaking through to rank 6. Even if it was difficult, he had to try. The rank 6 yin-yang spiritual items in other places were all monopolized by the 7 Stars Alliance, Blood Shark, and Mystic Island. Even the middle and lower level forces of the 7 Stars Alliance couldn't get their hands on them, let alone an outsider like him. Without the help of rank 6 yin-yang spiritual items, he could only rely on himself to absorb the yin-yang qi to break through to the soul formation stage. The sun at noon and the moonlight of a full moon could have the same effect. If he absorbed the yin-yang qi from the sun and moon every day, he might be able to break through to the soul formation stage in 1,000 or 800 years. Not many cultivators could afford such a long time. The yin-yang qi produced by the true fire of red yang and the gui water death flames was still too low. It wouldn't be enough to break through to the soul formation stage in 1,000 or 800 years. Chapter 792. His clone also checked that travel book. According to it, this Kunlun wanderer was taken in as a disciple by a cultivator when he was young. He didn't have any brilliant inheritance, but he was extremely talented. In the end, he had some achievements and ascended to this world. The time of his ascension should be in the middle of the Tang dynasty. After ascending to this world, the first place he came to was the Ascension Valley in the southern wasteland of Beiyuan Xiuxian. The book didn't mention the situation of the decimating heaven abyss, nor did it mention the demons. From the looks of it, this book should have been written before the demons invaded. The flow of time in this world was indeed very different from the world of his previous life. After the Kunlun wanderer ascended, he became the target of many forces. However, he was an itinerant cultivator since young and never joined any forces. Thus, he rejected all recruitment and traveled everywhere. Later, he cultivated to the Mahayana realm and traveled to the Sea of Seven Stars. The book had records of the various islands in the Sea of Seven Stars, but it didn't mention the Sunset Abyss. It seemed that the Sunset Abyss was formed after the Kunlun wanderer traveled here. Tens of thousands of years had passed. The islands recorded in the book were very different from the islands now. After all, many islands in the sea were constantly changing. For example, the commonly seen coral islands and volcanic islands would constantly grow with the growth of corals and volcanic eruptions. The book had very detailed descriptions of the common spiritual objects in the Sea of Seven Stars. For example, the blood corals around the rare treasure island and the star-patterned sea cucumber. Other than that, the book also mentioned the Blue Dragon ruins. The Kunlun wanderer didn't mention how far the Blue Dragon ruins was from the Sea of Seven Stars. He only said that it was in the east. There were also some descriptions of the terrain and products there. For example, there were a few places that produced extremely valuable spiritual plants like the soul-nurturing wood. The area of the island there was not smaller than the Sea of Seven Stars. However, the environment was extremely harsh and not suitable for low-level cultivators to survive. As a result, it was abandoned. He guessed that the Blue Dragon ruins also had a glorious cultivation civilization many years ago. However, for some reason, it was completely destroyed. The content of the book was very valuable to Wang Daoist. In the future, he planned to dig out a sea in the space of the Spirit Pearl and raise some seafood. At the very least, this book introduced the living habits of a lot of seafood. It would be more convenient to raise them in the future. After understanding the contents of the book, he continued to forge magic tools. Although there were people constantly coming to the small courtyard to scout the area, they couldn't easily enter since they couldn't figure out the situation of the defensive formation in a short time. The Huang family couldn't cover the sky with one hand in this market square, so they didn't dare to do anything openly. Every few months, Wang Daoist would adjust the small courtyard's defensive array formation so that the people sent by Old Master Huang would continue to be at a loss. He released the sword puppet to guard the small courtyard, while his Yuanying entered the space of the spiritual pearl to deduce the method of refining. After staying in this small courtyard for 3 years, he finally managed to deduce the new natal magic weapon. At the same time, he also refined 5 magic tools to test their power. This was an ordinary Dharma artifact, and there were no problems with its function. It was just that the materials used were ordinary and could not be combined together like a natal dermic artifact. However, as long as the tool pattern could be connected, there would be no problem. There was no problem in refining ordinary magic tools, so he could begin to refine his natal magic tool. There was no need to change the other 4 magic tools, except for the White Tiger Blade. The 5 natal magic tools were combined with the White Tiger Blade as the core, and finally merged into the Yinglong Demon Slaying Sword. It also had to be combined with the returning Origin Sword intent. The tool pattern had changed a lot, and in order to create the tool pattern inside, he had to refine it again. There was no need to use the Heaven Demon Metal for the new magic tool, so he directly used a piece of level 5 Tai Divine Metal to forge the White Tiger Blade. The original White Tiger Blade was refined using the smelting method, and all of its essence was merged into the new magic tool. After the magic tool was formed, there was no more White Tiger carving. The sword head, hilt, and nose were as simple as the returning Origin Sword. There were only 2 White Tiger patterns on both sides of the sword body. After forging the sword embryo, he put the 5 natal magic tools into the space of the spiritual pearl. After erasing the original tool patterns, he used his divine sense to create new tool patterns. Yuanying couldn't cultivate alone, and he couldn't personally forge magic tools, but it wasn't a problem for him to use his divine sense to create tool patterns. Yuanying used up too much of his divine sense, so he returned to his body and circulated his cultivation technique to recover. After recovering, he entered the space of the spiritual pearl. With the time acceleration, it took him less than a month to refine all 5 natal magic tools. He tried to combine the 5 magic tools in the space of the spiritual pearl, and the 5 magic tools turned into 5 balls of light. The 5 balls of light merged with each other and finally turned into a bright yellow ball of light, which was emitting Yinglong's aura. Soon, the light dissipated, and a bright yellow long sword appeared out of thin air. On the long sword, there was a carving of Yinglong. The sword's nose was the dragon's tail, the hilt was half of the dragon's body, the sword drum was Yinglong's wings, and the remaining half of the dragon's body and head were wrapped around the sword. At this moment, the aura of Yinglong's demon-slaying sword was no weaker than the returning origin sword. Of course, there was still a big gap in terms of material. After all, the returning origin sword was made of level 6 mixed essence iron, and it was personally forged by the supreme divinity Xianxia. Yinglong's demon-slaying sword was only a level 5 middle magic tool, and it was far from a level 6 upper magic tool. He summoned Yinglong from between the Yuanying's eyebrows and merged it into the sword. Yinglong's body had 5 weapon spirit embryos, and they all merged into the sword together. The Yinglong pattern on the sword seemed to come to life, and it emitted bursts of dragon's power. The spirit beasts in the space of the spiritual pearl panicked. Yun-Yi directly dived into the bottom of the pond, not daring to show her head. Even the red-feathered crow, who had been lying on the blood-fire fusong tree, was trembling in fear. Wang Daoyuan had never possessed such powerful strength before. If he used all his strength, it would not be a problem for him to kill the Yuanying at the peak. However, maintaining this state consumed a lot of spiritual power and divine sense. After all, he had integrated most of his strength into the sword, and he could only hold on for a dozen breaths of time. It seemed that this Yinglong's demon-slaying sword could not be used casually. It could only be used as a trump card. Yinglong's demon-slaying sword had been completed, and his strength had improved a lot. It was time to find trouble with Master Huang. Previously, he had speculated that Master Huang's Yuanying might have serious internal injuries, so it was better to deal with him as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he ate the nascent replenishing fruit and healed his internal injuries, it would be even more difficult to deal with him. Although Wang Daoyuan believed in the power of Yinglong's demon-slaying sword, Master Huang's cultivation at the peak of the Yuanying was not to be trifled with. To kill an enemy above one's level, one had to rely on one's strongest means to kill the opponent. This matter was not guaranteed. Once the opponent had some unique skill that could block his strongest means, it would be completely over. It was better to act as soon as possible before he recovered. After packing up his things, he left the small courtyard as if nothing had happened and went to the south gate of the market. There were already people watching the small courtyard. As soon as he left the small courtyard, a peak golden core cultivator took out a jade talisman to send a message. When he arrived at the south gate, he took out a token, opened the array formation on the gate, and walked out. A mid-Yuanying cultivator walked over and cupped his hands. "Wu Dao, long time no see. May I know why you left the city this time?" He did not know this person, but his goal was obvious. He was helping Master Huang stall for time. If Wang Daoyuan wanted to deal with Master Huang, he had to expose his sword cultivation methods. He could not be too close to the market. Otherwise, he would be surrounded as soon as he used his sword cultivation methods. He could not be bothered with this person. He only said coldly, "Daoyu, it's best if you don't meddle in other people's business. Who knows if there will be rain under the clouds? Don't get yourself into trouble." Then his body emitted intense spirit power fluctuations as if he was about to attack at any time. How strong could a gatekeeper be? The mid-Yuanying cultivator knew that he was no match for him and did not dare to stop him. After Wang Daoyuan left the city gate, he took out a grade 5 flying boat and headed south. At this moment, Master Huang received the message in the Huang family's mansion. He smiled sinisterly. "Jin Shan, I will avenge you today." Chapter 793. Wang Daoyuan rode the flying boat all the way to the south. Soon, he had flown more than 30,000 miles and arrived at the edge of the coral reef outside the rare treasure island. He looked back and saw that old Master Huang had not followed him. Wang Daoyuan wanted to get rid of Old Master Huang completely and get the nascent replenishing fruit at the same time. Using the nascent replenishing fruit to form a nascent soul and increase the potential of Yuanying was much better than using it after forming a nascent soul. With this, he could immediately return to Beiyuan Xiuxian and help Zhou Luan form her nascent soul. As for the Sunset Abyss and Azure Dragon ruins, he was not in a hurry. Finding a wife was more important. Since Old Master Huang was not here, he could not stay idle. There was no point in setting up a formation. Against a peak Yuanying cultivator, a 4th grade formation was negligible. He planned to use this time to find something like seafood. When he attacked later, he would have to expose his sword cultivation methods. There were often cultivators coming and going here. It was inevitable that other cultivators would see him. After killing Old Master Huang, he had to leave as soon as possible. Since he had time now, he naturally had to make good use of it. He kept the flying boat and went into the coral reef. He found a few coral trees that were more than a foot tall and cut them down together with the rocks attached to them. He placed them in the space of the Spirit Pearl. He dug a pit that was more than 10 acres in size at the edge of the Spirit Pearl and filled it with seawater. He placed the corals in the pit. This pit was mainly to raise star-patterned sea cucumbers. According to the records of the traveler in the Sea of 7 Stars, the star-patterned sea cucumbers' star power came from food. The power of the stars in the food was absorbed during the night. Therefore, the place where the star-patterned sea cucumbers were raised must be able to see starlight. There were 3 star cores in the space of the Spirit Pearl. He could make use of them. It was not easy to find 4th grade and 5th grade star-patterned sea cucumbers, but the lower grade ones were easy to find. He caught dozens of 2nd grade and 3rd grade sea cucumbers and placed them in the sea pond. There were many star-patterned sea cucumbers food in the seawater that was poured into the space of the Spirit Pearl. After doing all this, he returned to the surface of the sea. A few hundred miles north, a 5th grade flying boat was flying towards him. A white-bearded and white-haired cultivator stood at the bow of the ship with a ferocious smile on his face. This person was none other than Old Master Huang. As the flying boat got closer, Old Master Huang said coldly, "At least you know your place. You know that you can't escape, so you should just stay here and wait for death. The treasure map is still with you, right?" For the sake of the treasure map, I can spare you some time. Wang Daoyuan didn't care. Do you have the nourishing soul fruit with you? If you've already eaten it, I'll torture you. If you haven't eaten it and still left it at home, then I'll kill you and then trample the Huang family. His harsh words were so arrogant that Master Huang was enraged. "Ignorant child, what a big tone you have. The nascent replenishing fruit is on me. If you have the ability, come and take it. You killed my eldest son. If I don't tear you to pieces, I won't be able to vent my anger." When Yuanying cultivators broke through to the soul formation stage, the heavenly general lightning tribulation was not a big deal. The main thing was the inner demon tribulation. If an obsession was left in one's heart, it would be very difficult to survive the inner demon tribulation. It seemed like killing young Master Huang had a huge impact on Old Master Huang's state of mind. If he didn't kill him, Old Master Huang wouldn't dare to try to break through to the soul formation stage. The nascent replenishing fruit was most likely reserved for when he was preparing to break through. Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan was relieved. "Since the nascent replenishing fruit is still here, I'll give you a dignified death." Old Master Huang waved his hand, and a huge wave appeared on the surface of the sea, covering Wang Daoyuan. Seeing this huge wave, Wang Daoyuan's expression turned serious. His estimation of Old Master Huang's strength was still too low. There were many Dharma spells that could summon huge waves, but Old Master Huang was able to do it so easily. It was definitely not an ordinary Dharma spell. Wang Daoyuan felt intense fluctuations of the law of water from the huge wave. It should be a water-controlling divine ability. The strength of a peak Yuanying cultivator with divine abilities was not easy to estimate. He also used his divine ability and gathered all the spirit qi within a radius of 400 miles. Then, a huge black tortoise shadow was formed. He used the black tortoise suppressing the sea to suppress the huge wave. The effect was not bad. The height of the wave was reduced by more than half. Wang Daoyuan flew in the air and was not affected at all. Old Master Huang snorted. A domain-type divine ability? No wonder you're so arrogant. The huge wave arrived at Wang Daoyuan's feet and turned into a blue water dragon. The water dragon left the surface of the sea and attacked Wang Daoyuan with its tail. He controlled the black tortoise shadow and released a suppressive force to suppress the water dragon. Unfortunately, the black tortoise was not strong enough and was directly penetrated by the water dragon. Wang Daoyuan took out the black dragon halberd and scattered the water dragon. Old Master Huang released a wave of spiritual power into the water, and the water dragon turned into a water dragon again. A water-type cultivator with a water-controlling divine ability was invincible on the sea. Wang Daoyuan took out the sword puppet. Without needing him to control it, the sword puppet slashed out a few sword flares. The water dragon was hit by the 5 sword flares and turned into mist. The sea returned to calm. Old Master Huang's expression was serious. There's actually such a powerful sword cultivator puppet. No wonder you're so arrogant. Unfortunately, this puppet is not enough to defeat me. The sword puppet's strength was comparable to a late-stage Yuanian cultivator's. In addition, sword cultivators had the advantage of speed. Although Old Master Huang said he did not care, he did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly put away the flying boat and flew toward the sea. He landed on the surface of the sea and kept making complicated hand seals. The surrounding sea became turbulent again. Dozens of water dragons flew from the sea and surrounded Wang Daoyuan. Old Master Huang was serious this time. It was already difficult for him to deal with 2 water dragons with just his divine abilities and spells, let alone dozens of water dragons. At this moment, the 5 elements natal dharma artifacts had merged into one. Yinglong's demon-slaying sword was ready to be used. Yinglong's mark and the prototype of the artifact spirit had also merged and could give Old Master Huang a fatal blow at any time. Then, he took out the origin returning sword and used the sword shadow divine light technique. 10 sword shadows appeared instantly. Now, the power of one sword shadow was half of the full power of the longsword. When the 10 sword shadows flew out, each sword shadow could replace one water dragon. When the sword shadows were used up, he continued to replenish them. The sword puppet also helped to share the pressure and blocked several water dragons. Seeing him use sword cultivator techniques, Old Master Huang's face was filled with joy. You are sword cultivator Zhou Ming? Who would have thought that such a great benefit would fall into my hands? The heavens are really protecting my Huang family. The water spiritual energy fluctuation on his body became more intense. It was still condensing water dragons and attacking Wang Daoyuan. There were still too few sword shadows. The water dragons were getting closer and closer. Wang Daoyuan used the Big Dipper sword formation at the same time. 36 sword shadows went straight for Old Master Huang. He did not care and condensed another 10 water dragons to protect himself. 36 sword shadows formed a sword formation and completely covered Old Master Huang and the water dragons. In an instant, countless sword glows slashed out, and cold light shot out in all directions. Wang Daoyuan used the sky-splitting sword teleportation, turning into a sword shadow and attacking Old Master Huang. The water dragons smashed onto the sword shadows, causing Wang Daoyuan's organs to rupture and he spat out blood. The sword shadows were also a little unstable, but he had no intention of retreating. If this attack did not succeed, he would definitely die. After a while, the cold light dissipated and the 36 sword shadows collapsed. Old Master Huang was still surrounded by 5 water dragons. Seeing Wang Daoyuan attack, he revealed a disdainful smile. He took out a small black jade cauldron. After injecting spiritual energy, the small cauldron instantly grew to more than 6 meters tall. The other water dragons also followed closely behind Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan dispersed the sword shadows. Countless sword chi condensed into the demon-slaying sword. The sword slashed onto the black jade cauldron, causing a loud explosion. The black jade cauldron was sent flying. Wang Daoyuan suffered from the backlash and spat out a large mouthful of blood. The origin returning sword also flew out of his hand. Old Master Huang was not injured at all. The 5 water dragons were still protecting him. He took out a blue sword and was about to kill Wang Daoyuan. At this moment, a bright yellow sword appeared out of nowhere. A dazzling bright yellow light flashed, and the sword appeared behind Old Master Huang. The dozens of water dragons nearby instantly collapsed. Then his body turned into a bloody mist, dyeing the surrounding seawater red. Wang Daoyuan coughed out a large mouthful of blood. Yinglong is the first person to be killed by the demon-slaying sword. This is a decent death. Chapter 794. He was attacked several times by the water dragon and clashed with a peak Yuanian cultivator. If his body wasn't strong enough, he would have died. Even so, his injuries weren't light. Fortunately, the Yuanian cultivators weren't affected too much. He put Yinglong's demon-slaying sword into his body and split it into 5 Dharma artifacts. He controlled the Azure Dragon Pearl and used the Azure Dragon Restoration technique to heal his internal injuries. Under the nourishment of life energy, his internal injuries healed. He would need 10 days to half a month to fully recover. Liao Yang put away the Dharma artifacts and universe ring left behind by Old Master Huang. He controlled the flying ship and flew towards the west. After he flew far away, a cultivator's head popped out from the coral reef. The cultivator took out a jade talisman and sent a message. 10 minutes later, True Lord Rampant Sea received a message in a shop in the market of Rare Treasure Island. He was overjoyed when he saw it. Just as he was about to laugh, he seemed to have thought of something and quickly pretended that nothing had happened. He thought to himself, now, only the Imperial Regency knows that Wu Chuan is Zhou Ming. This must not be leaked. As long as I can take him down, I'll be able to obtain the Ziwei Palace's artifact forging, puppet technique, and sword cultivation inheritance. He's already able to kill peak Yuanian cultivators. It seems like I need to report this to the sect master. While he's heavily injured, I'll gather experts to attack him. He walked out of his room and went to a stone room under the shop. There was a large communication array here. When Wang Daoyuan and Old Master Huang were fighting, they didn't notice anyone else. However, their fight caused too much of a commotion. It was almost impossible for no one to notice. Once someone noticed, they would be hunted down. Moreover, the news of Old Master Huang's death could be hidden from others, but not from the Huang family. The Huang family still had a Xuejiao. This fellow's strength was definitely not below Old Master Huang's. Wang Daoyuan was heavily injured now. He didn't have the ability to fight another peak Yuanian cultivator. Within the space of the Spirit Pearl, the clone was looking through Old Master Huang's belongings. Perhaps he thought that Wang Daoyuan would try his best to escape and would need to chase after him for a long time, so he brought a large number of high-grade spirit stones with him. There were more than 200,000 pieces. The nascent replenishing fruit he got at the auction was also kept in a jade box in his universe ring. Wang Daoyuan was also relieved. With this thing, he could return to Beiyuan Xiaoxian directly. There was also a Class 5 superior-grade flying boat in the interspatial ring. Wang Daoyuan's flying boat was only Class 5 inferior grade. After switching to the newly captured flying boat, the speed was indeed much faster, reaching over 23,000 miles in 2 hours. At this speed, it would only take 5 to 6 years to return to Beiyuan Xiaoxian. In addition to the treasures in the ring, there was also a 5th-order upper-grade long sword and the black jade cauldron. The 2 magical artifacts were Old Master Huang's natal magical artifacts, and now their powers were greatly reduced. If he wanted to continue using them, he would need to reforge them. Wang Daoyuan did not have the ability to do so at the moment. However, these 2 magical artifacts still had great potential, especially the black jade cauldron. It could withstand a blow from the Sword of Origin Restoring and was still undamaged. Its material was not ordinary. If he could reforge it in the future, it would also be a good defensive magical artifact. The flying boat flew west for a day, trying to avoid the islands along the way, and did not encounter any pursuers. On the 2nd day, demonic birds began to appear near the flying boat. They did not approach the flying boat, nor did they go far away. They only kept a distance of more than 1,000 miles and stared at the flying boat. There was no doubt that these demonic birds had a master. It seemed that he had indeed been seen killing old Master Huang. In the Qixing Si Xiuxian community, the strongest beast-taming organization was the Imperial Regency. These demonic birds were most likely related to them. Wang Daoyuan did not deal with these demonic birds. They were extremely fast and agile in the air. It would be a waste of time to chase after them. He was now more than 400,000 miles southwest of the core area of the Sea of Seven Stars. He was still heading west. There were not many large islands or high-level spirit veins in the western part of the Sea of Seven Stars. The resources were not very rich, so the various forces did not place many experts here. If the Blood Shark wanted to send experts, they would need to mobilize from the southern part of the Sea of Seven Stars. They did not have Mahayana cultivators. Even Soul Formation cultivators did not have the ability to tear space. If he wanted to chase after them for a long distance, he could only take the flying boat slowly. He still had a high chance of escaping. After being stared at by the demonic birds for 4 hours, a low-grade 5th-grade flying boat appeared in front of him. It seemed that the cultivators who were going to intercept him had arrived. Wang Daoyuan did not panic. Looking at the grade of this flying boat, he knew that there would not be opponents with high cultivation levels. They probably knew that he was seriously injured, so they sent a few cultivators with low cultivation levels to take advantage of him. When the two flying boats were about 250 miles apart, 3 cultivators appeared on the bow of the opposite flying boat. 2 of them were mid-stage Yuaning, and 1 was early-stage Yuaning. One of the mid-stage Yuaning cultivators shouted, "Daoyuzhou, you are strong, but you are seriously injured. How much of your strength can you use? Give up resisting and return to the Golden Scale Island with us. As long as Daoyu is willing to hand over the inheritance, the Imperial Regency will not treat Daoyu badly. With Daoyu's talent, it would not be a problem for him to become an elder. If you resist stubbornly, we can only send Daoyu on his way." Wang Daoyuan was relieved to see these 3 people. Although he was seriously injured and could not use half of his strength, he did not need to use much strength to deal with them. The flying boat continued forward. When they were about 200 miles apart, Wang Daoyuan activated his divine power. Using the divine power only consumed the power of one's divine sense. It did not affect one's body much. The spirit qi within 400 miles was instantly converted into fire-type spirit qi. Then, the red yang primordial fire flew out and turned the surroundings into a sea of fire. The 3 Yuanian cultivators hurriedly left the flying boat to avoid the attack. The cultivator controlling the flying boat activated the defensive array and fled to the west, trying to escape the range of the divine power. Wang Daoyuan took out the vermilion bird fan and controlled the red yang primordial fire. The vermilion bird fan required spirit qi from the red yang primordial fire. Wang Daoyuan did not need to use any of his strength. He only needed to use the power of his divine sense. 3 vermilion bird phantoms flew out of the vermilion bird fan and chased after the 3 Yuanian cultivators. Domain God art was not much more useful than ordinary God art when used against an extremely powerful single opponent. However, when it came to group battles, if the opponent's strength was inferior to his, there wouldn't be much of a difference whether 1 or 10 came. The 3 Yuanian cultivators saw that the vermilion bird phantoms were not easy to deal with, so they all used escape techniques to dodge. The 2 mid-stage Yuanian cultivators each took out a refined corpse of the same level. The early-stage Yuanian cultivator took out another puppet of the same level. Wang Daoyuan did not take these things seriously. 3 more vermilion bird phantoms flew out of the vermilion bird fan. When the divine power was activated, he could cast 6 Dharma spells at the same time. The consumption of his divine sense was less than 6 times that of casting 1 Dharma spell. Seeing that Wang Daoyuan was at ease, the 3 cultivators' faces turned pale. Their fear did not last long. Wang Daoyuan continued to control the flames to suppress their speed. Soon, the 3 cultivators were restrained by the vermilion bird phantoms and could only rely on their defensive Dharma artifacts. They were competing with a world of 400 miles. In less than 100 breaths, the 3 cultivators and the 2 refined corpses were burned to ashes. Their Dharma artifacts and interspatial rings were put away. Wang Daoyuan could not bear to burn the remaining puppet. He only used the flames to trap it and put it away in his interspatial ring. The flying boat that the 3 cultivators were on had already escaped the range of the divine power. Wang Daoyuan put away the divine power and chased after them on the 5th grade flying boat. The difference in speed between the 2 flying boats was quite big. It only took 100 breaths to catch up with the other party. Using his divine sense, he found that there were only 2 peak stage golden core cultivators on the flying boat. One of them was a pentaspirit root cultivator. Wang Daoyuan was overjoyed. If he could refine this pentaspirit root cultivator into a clone and cultivate it to the Yuanying realm, he would be able to cultivate it. In the future, he would not need to take risks to improve his cultivation technique. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.